Good evening, everybody, and welcome to your Zoning Board of Appeals, May 7th, 2019 hearing. My last as chairman, thank goodness. A couple of things that we want to go over before we get started this evening. We have a very busy agenda, a couple of continued hearings, and then six cases on for this evening. First off, some inter-board reorganizing we'll do in a minute, but I'd like to recognize somebody that is no longer with the board. After 19 years of faithful service to this town, Mrs. Barbara Kinter has retired. And Mrs. Kinter, if many of you know Barbara and Dick, because they are a team, wherever one went, the other went. And if you know Mrs. Kinter, she served on this board for 19 years. She also served faithfully on the Concerts for the Common Committee from its inception till now, and I believe she's still on the committee. And again, around town, she's known for her ferocious fundraising ability. If any committee that needed any type of fundraising, Barbara was the go-to person because she knows everybody. So just like anything in life, her tenure, her service to this board and to this town has come to an end. We'll all get there. And for 19 years, she's been a faithful steward of that chair that her now replacement, Attorney Scott Murphy, has been appointed by the Board of Selectmen unanimously, and also unanimously from this board. We also recommended you. So congratulations, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Scott was a former associate member, and you were associate for how long?
I think 9 or 10 years.
Yeah, 9 or 10 years, yeah.
Wow.
And local attorney Scott comes by way of his tenure from the former Norwood Media Television and Norwood Community Media. It was formerly called NPA, Norwood Public Access. Scott was instrumental in starting that whole organization and that whole entity. Well, you're not?
It's been a long time. That's been going on a long time too. Yeah.
So
we have them here. First thing I said, you got to have the ZBA covered. Pretty soon it's going to be live.
Well, Scott, thank you very much for your service. Now we look forward to your expertise, your zoning background, your legal background, and you're an asset to the board. And you've got some big shoes to fill because Barbara was well loved. And to Barbara and Dick, if you're watching this, a tip of the cap to both of you. The old axiom behind every good man is a good woman. This point is behind a good woman is a better man. Mr. Kinter, you're an angel. Mrs. Kinter, we love you. Thank you for your service.
Well
Mr. Chair,
said.
thank you. And I want to say I'm sitting in Mrs. Kinter's seat, but I can't fill her shoes. So
True.
Right.
she's been, she was a real inspiration all the times I sat on the board with her.
Well said.
So,
Well said.
Well said. Yep. So, tip of the hat, Barbara. Secondly, we have an associate member that was appointed to the board to take Mr. Murphy's spot. Before I recognize her, I'd like to congratulate our associate member that's sitting with us this evening, Mary Anderson. Mary was also reappointed by the Board of Selectmen to a 3-year term. So, Mary, again, thank you very much for being in the
My
quote-unquote bullpen when we need you. And you're always there when the phone rings. And I have to say that because a lot of people don't realize sometimes this board is very routine and very just, okay, yeah, we've seen that application before, you're in and out, no problem. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's very detailed. A couple of applications we joked about earlier are getting very detailed and very in-depth. We have to do your homework, have to do your diligence, have to go out and pay a visit. And Mary is always there, and she's always been there for the board and for the town. So on behalf of the town of Norwood, thank you for your service.
you.
Thank you for being reappointed. And our full-time member, Mr. Thomas Brady. Mr. Brady came to the board 3 years ago? Yes.
Yes.
3 full years ago, and he was just reappointed. Many of you have seen Tom regularly. Thomas, thank you very much for your service and for your reappointment to the board. To fill Mr. Murphy's spot, we have Miss Georgia Wilson. Miss Wilson is in the back of the room, and she comes to us via, you were the planner in the town of Hopkinton?
Correct.
Yes. So she has a zoning background. She put her name in the resume pool, and the Board of Selectmen saw the opening with Mr. Murphy's departure that was coming forward. Miss Wilson was obviously volunteering her service to the town, putting her name in the resume pool, and the Selectmen saw the resume. It stood out. It was a no-brainer. So, Georgia, congratulations. We look forward to serving with you and your expertise. Thank you very much. That being said, it's come that time again. My year is up. And We do regularly reorganizing of the board, as do many of the boards here in town. And this year, Mr. Brady has approached me, and he has asked that I appoint, or I recommend nomination for him to serve as chairman. And many of you that watch the meetings know that over the past 2, 3, 4 years, Mr. Riley and I have been bouncing back and forth, and, you know, somewhat voluntarily, somewhat not. Last year, I didn't want to do it again.
I made him do it.
I know.
I had done it for
But
10 years in a row. I mean,
yeah,
it seemed like that.
Mr. Riley has been obviously on the board the longest. Phil, may I ask how long your service has been?
40 years.
40 years, ladies and gentlemen, of volunteerism for the town. And when I came on the board, as many of the boards do, we rotate the chair of the gavel. Basically, you're a referee, but you also have to know what you're doing. You have to know the subject matter. You have to know the application. I feel very strongly that it should rotate from member to member. I got the reasons why. We were in the throes of 40B. The last 2 applications were very complex. A lot of detail went into those. But now, again, I feel that it's come a time that, you know, a new face should have that gavel, and I'm happy to nominate Mr. Thomas Brady. Do I hear a second?
Second.
By Mr. Perry. Do I hear any discussion on the nomination?
I have one discussion.
Mr. Riley?
Do I get to keep my chair? You're not going to take my chair, are you?
No, we're just gonna.
You'll stay where you are and just hand the
Reminder,
gavel to Tom.
do we switch chairs, or does he
can
just take?
Well,
yeah.
he's in the middle. That's where the chair is supposed to be. You can just give him the gavel if you want. But my only concern is you're not going to take my chair, are you?
Thank God.
All right, well, then
But
I'm
I
o-
still like sitting next
As
to
long
you.
as you're not taking my chair, I'm okay.
So seeing no further discussion on the nomination of Mr. Brady as the 2019-2020 Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I'll take it to a vote. All those in favor of the nomination say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 5-0. The chair is yours. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
The only
Good
thing
job.
I ask is that you don't utilize your caller ID when I call looking for help, advice, or prayer.
No worries. No worries,
Please.
Thomas. No worries. So now this pile is yours.
Good.
Yeah, we've got some room
Now
here.
I can put this stuff
We've
here.
got some room, Phil.
Thank you.
So,
Right.
Very much, I
It's
think.
working out good.
I appreciate the confidence, I do,
Get your phone out of the way.
I do appreciate your support. You know, I look forward to it too, so.
no worries,
Looking
Thomas.
forward for the help, and,
Good.
'cause that's it, I'm still learning, I'll be the first to admit it, I'm not afraid to ask for help.
No
or
worries.
advice, So,
Oh, please do.
You won't have to look far
Don't,
over here or
no.
there.
will do, will do.
Please do.
So anyways, first order of business.
So I am out for this one, Mr. Chair, right?
Yes,
Yes, Mary's on
yes.
this
Well,
one.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brady. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Well, wait a minute,
You
who's
stepped
this?
up.
I was calling you
You're
Mr.
on
Chairman.
this one.
Yes.
I know
Josh
you
just
are.
vacating.
I'll
the
step
chair,
back.
I think,
Gotta
Yep.
get used to
because he's
calling
not
somebody
sitting
Mr. Chairman and
This-
not
what's
calling
that,
somebody
Lennox
else
Street,
Mr.
Jim?
Chairman.
Yeah, Lennox.
Lennox
Yeah.
Street parking case, all right.
Yes, here it is, yeah.
Okay.
Is that it? Yeah, 111 Lennox. Yeah, there it is.
So just as a refresher, this application requests a special permit under section 6.1 of the zoning bylaws to allow less parking than normally required under zoning bylaws in connection with the establishment of tenancies and businesses in an existing shopping plaza pursuant to section 6.1.12 of the zoning bylaws, together with such other or further relief as the zoning board of appeal may determine to be appropriate. Plans are on file in the zoning board of appeal office and can be viewed during normal working hours, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. With that being said, we can continue on from where we were last time, and the meeting is open. So, just give me 1 second. Okay, so if my memory serves me correct. You won't help
Yeah,
here.
David came in, we had the discussion, and then just have him carry on and reopen it and refresh the board, and then we'll go from there.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, David Hearn Jr. on behalf of the applicant on this matter, which is Manhattan, what do we call this, Manhattan Realty?
Leonard.
Manhattan Realty LLC,
sorry.
which is the 111 Lenox Street,
Right.
Manhattan Place, that strip of stores and other businesses at Lenox Street and at the corner of Manhattan Street. This is a continued hearing. It was held open from when we were with you 3 weeks ago. And what we're seeking in this matter is special permit relief that essentially determines that the parking on the site is adequate for the uses. Let me, if I could, refresh the board's memory on this a little bit, and I've also given you this evening a table that shows current uses and spaces occupied by the different businesses that are there. There is some vacant space. We discussed that a little bit the last time we were here, and actually it's the vacant space that gives rise to the application. We have, and by the way, this is Steve Miller, who's the manager of the property and is frequently at the property. And Mr. Miller was with us the last time also. This property has some food establishments. There's Same Old Place Pizza, there's Boston Market, there's a Subway. It has the Blue Hills Bank at one end. There are some other service establishments there. And it is a busy plaza, but it is a plaza that is busy, has peak times for different businesses at different times of the day. The table that I gave you shows that we have 154 spaces, 139 of them on-site, and we get to count the spaces in front of the property on the street that are legal, and we get 15 spaces there. So we have a total of
Does that account
154.
for the difference between 130 that we heard before and the 154? I have a note about 130 as being the number of spaces.
Well,
Was the 154
the count that we
include-
had when we first prepared this and went forward was 139 on
Oh,
site.
130, I thought it was 130.
139 plus the 15
Then that would be the. all
on
right,
the street.
I got you.
And as you can imagine, the restaurant or food service uses are busy at certain times of day, lunchtime and evening. That's when they're busy. The bank can be busy at different times of day. I'm sure that most of you have been there at one time or another. Formerly, it had a large Blockbuster store there. There's another bank, by the way, the Credit Union at the Manhattan Street end of the property. Shiva Bazaar, which is a specialty grocery store, is down sort of at a corner. This is like an L shape, the building, and they are there. What brings us here on this application is the fact that we've got 6,400 square feet that's vacant, and Shiva Bazaar is proposing to expand its operation and take about 4,575 square feet. And what they're proposing is to be able to offer meat to their customers. Much of their customer base follows particular, based on religious reasons, follows particular rules with respect to meat. And halal is the type of meat that's often used by Muslims. There is no halal meat market in the area. Currently, folks who shop at Shiva Bazaar for dry goods and produce and so forth have to go to Brighton or Cambridge to get halal meat. The proposal that the owner of Shiva Bazaar has is to expand the operation with a meat counter that would follow the halal rules and to serve his current customers. So they don't have to go shopping in two places, they can go shopping in the one place and get produce, dry goods, and meat. We submit that that's not really going to increase the traffic there, although if you add 3,575 square feet for retail and 1,000 square feet for storage area that they would have or need, you'd say, you know, you're going to need more parking spaces, but you're now using more if you apply the table that's in the bylaw. The other space that's open, about 1,875 square feet, was formerly the Edible Arrangements operation. Now, that was a retail operation. It dealt with food, but it was not serving food. You went in and instead of buying a bouquet of flowers, you bought a bouquet of fruit, I guess. And that's vacant, and my client would like to be able to rent that space out. The difficulty we run into is that when work is done on these spaces and somebody goes in for a certificate of occupancy, the building inspector says, well, wait a minute, how many spaces, what are you doing here, and how many spaces do we have to count? And we're adding to the count. And it arguably goes beyond what we would need, what we can produce. By my calculation, the retail expansion, retail area expansion at Shiva Bazaar, 3,575 square feet, rounds up to 15 additional spaces. We submit that it's not really going to be bringing new people, it's the same people who get to do all their shopping in one place. The storage area at 1,000 square feet would require one space. The remaining 1,825 square feet is requires about 7 spaces, based upon the retail requirements. And we may need that. Now, you previously looked at this with respect to Jam Time a year and a half ago, and the board recognized that the particular uses that are made of the space in the plaza put different demands, different time demands for parking on the site. Jam Time, people with young children, late morning, early afternoon, they're out of there. They're not involved with the supper time rush at Boston Market or at the pizza shop or Subway. They're not really involved with the lunchtime rush. People go to the bank at different times of day. Mr. Miller can tell you how often he's at the site and what he sees. Some of you, on your own experience, may have noticed that there are generally extra spaces in that plaza. I'm not seeking to become a witness, but I happened to drive by a few days ago at noontime, on a weekday at noontime, and I counted about 20 vacant spaces shortly after 12 noon. Now, that also is when we factor in that the spaces out on the street, which we get to count, are presently being used by the construction workers who were involved in the Avalon project. So spaces that we get to apply to our property are taken early in the morning and all day long. Even with those spaces taken, we still have vacant spaces in our property. But every time we get a new tenant, the question's going to be raised in the building department, and I'm not criticizing Mr. Schubert, that's his job to raise that question. So we're asking the board to render a decision that would say that we have, that the parking that we provide is appropriate and is sufficient for the plaza. Now, if you go back to when this property was built, this property was built for a while. Puritan Furniture used this property, and they wanted to do, back in 1973, retail. They were talking about 50,000 square feet for their operation. They had many fewer spaces at that time, and relief was granted by this board at that time in 1973. We have 154 spaces available. We have total space is 44,670 square feet of usable space, all on the ground floor, so that has the maximum requirement. And we don't have traffic jams. We don't have people parking in fire lanes. And Mr. Miller will tell you how often he goes there and how often he finds that he doesn't have a problem. And that's even with some of the construction workers occasionally parking in our spot.
Correct. I mean, I've had to make calls to Avalon, and they've been very good. I mean, the foreman on the job site really says it's awful hard. I mean, he can't stand out in the street and watch and see who parks, but he's asked his foreman and the crews to not park in our lots, which he's done a good job. Done a very good job.
But if you would tell the board what's your experience when you go, what times of day do you go by, and
I come
what do you
here.
say?
I come here at all times of the day. I mean, my job requires that I respond to tenants when they have a problem, and also just to come down and check things out and make sure that, you know, everything is fine, the back is clean, Board of Health is not being involved. And every time I come down here, I mean, it's only one car, admitted, but I've never had a problem trying to find a parking space. So I was down here the last 2 weeks 4 times. One time I counted 23 parking spaces, the other time I counted 12. And the other 2 times, they were numbers in between that range, but there's always been parking, and it's never been an issue with our tenants that they don't have enough parking. So, and I've been doing it for almost 30 years, so.
I think one way to look at it, Mr. Chairman, I have to get used to looking at Mr. Chairman here after so many years.
Don't look at the two of us, we're not doing it now.
I'm already doing that.
Well, I'm in the opposite chair from my usual chair, too.
That's true.
I can't
But-
hear in this ear, so.
Schmoozing will get you nowhere, Council.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mulvihill. But, I mean, another way to look at this is the town authorized the construction of the shopping plaza years ago. And the layout was laid out then, when the building was built and the parking lot was built. And if now we had to shut down space because the current rules say that, oh, now you have to have so much for this and so much for that, and you're rounding up and and it defies the actual experience that we have enough space, we have a lot of vacant spaces, that it would seem unfair that we'd have to otherwise hold space vacant because the spaces don't add up to this table that's in our bylaw. But the bylaw also gives you the authority to grant relief from that if you see fit, and we're trying to convince you that you should see your way to that this is under 6.1.12, the zoning board is a special permit granting authority. If we can show that granting that relief will not result in substantial detriment to the neighborhood. There are going to be variables here, there are going to be times when there may be more people shopping, but if you think back to when that plaza had Blockbuster there, that was a lot of people coming and going, all the time, particularly late in the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, people down there. I was always down there getting movies for my kids and ourselves and all that, back when you used to have to go and do that. And that place has generally flourished. We want to be able to fill the spaces, but we're going to run into a problem with the certificate of occupancy unless this board recognizes that the space we have available is sufficient to the various uses that we have. And I submit that otherwise the town wouldn't have allowed this place to be built years ago. Or to allow it to be built and then to take it away effectively would not be equitable.
All right, the point's well taken for certain, Dave. Let me just refresh in my memory. Is this gonna, the meat section of the Shiva Bazaar, it's not 2 different stores?
No,
No.
it's
They're
just
not-
a
they're
new
talking about
counter, a
knocking
new
down
area.
the wall to go into the other
Yes.
Yep.
area? That
Yep.
was- that was
Common
what it
wall.
was, right.
Yeah,
Coming
not a
down.
separate store, it's part of the same store.
Okay.
And then the edible arrangements, that's been vacant for a little while. We're trying to find a customer for that. Are we expected to be retail or?
Well, I got a call today from the realty company, and they wanted a key to the place. I think they're actively trying to promote that space, so.
It would not be a food service
Oh,
place.
no.
Because that wouldn't be fair, and that's part of the deal with
Yeah.
it would not be food.
Would not be food
Service that would, require the counting spaces for, in a food service place, you're counting by the number of seats in the place and the number of takeout stations. It wouldn't be a food service establishment because there are already 3 there. And the plaza wouldn't bear it and wouldn't be fair to those current tenants. So it would be likely to be some sort of retail or service establishment.
What they're looking for, yes.
All right, one other question before I open it up. Was there another hiccup? Do I remember if there was another hiccup on this regarding the occupancy permit, or is it just a parking issue?
There was a question on an occupancy permit for same old place, but I don't think that came before the board when they were
I'm talking
doing the
specifically
changeover.
the Shiva Bazaar thing you're doing right now.
I-
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm
No.
All
aware
right,
of.
No.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
thinking of something else. All right.
Yeah.
So I'll open it up to the board if anybody else has any further questions.
Very quickly, David, you've got 6,400 square feet left to lease out?
Right, and of that, 4575 would be proposed for the Shiva Bazaar. 1,000 of it for storage and $35.75 for the grocery store. That would allow for the
Am I
meat.
reading this incorrectly, that you've got retail use is 91 spaces, storage use 1 space, commercial recreation 14 space, restaurant use is 35. What about the, of the 6,400, how many more spaces are you gonna need? You have that blank next to that.
I do.
How many are you gonna need if you're fully occupied?
Let me give you the up-to-date, I have an updated, I should have given this out to you, but this, so,
Were you holding that strategically? or-
No. I wanted to answer the question.
Is that a lawyer thing, Phil, or?
No,
No.
well, I think I already have this.
No, that's the
Well, this
updated
is
one.
new.
Yeah.
That one,
Okay.
now that, when I prepared the other one, I didn't have the information about Shiva Bazaar.
All right.
But this is what I'm quoting from, and I'm sorry I didn't give it out to you. Shiva Bazaar, you could say they'd need 15, one for storage and 15 for the retail area. I submit that the same people who are shopping for produce will be shopping for meat, so that doesn't really add a lot of parking demand. The retail space remaining, which is the former edible arrangement space, 1,825 feet, that rounds to 7 spaces. That was occupied previously. I mean, we've had the place fully occupied in the past, and it
Yeah,
hasn't been a problem.
a decade or more, we've.
But
had
when
it
they
really
try to get
So,
new certificates,
Okay.
that's when we have the
so
difficulty.
you, just to recap, you're asking this board to decrease the requirement?
I'm asking this board to grant a special permit determining that that no new parking spaces are required for filling, when we fill the vacant space.
Shiva Bazaar space.
And also the 1,825 feet that were incredible, not incredible,
Okay.
edible arrangements was.
So,
Incredible, edible.
I asked you this last time, and we've had this discussion over other applications, that the board is always able to modify and amend its decision. Most recently, I think it was, I forget which one it was now, I'm drawing a blank, that you represented the applicant, and, it was Wendy's, the no right turn. The
Right.
sign coming in from BJ's Gas into Wendy's, that we said may be a problem. And you said, well, if it turns out to be a problem, the board can always revisit it a year later, and if we have a multitude of complaints,
That's right.
what's the remedy?
The
Now, the
remedy-
remedy, just, let's
Yep.
transpose this argument onto Shiva. If this place turns into a hornet's nest, and I brought this up at the last meeting, if this turns into a hornet's nest and it's a going concern, it's thriving, and they're coming from all over the place to get the halal meat, and it's a hornet's nest of traffic on Lennox, Star Market's complaining that you guys are spilling over into their parking lot, blah, 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 blah. What do we do? Do we go back to Shiva and say, we gotta pull your permit after he spent $500,000 to equip the place?
The permit is to us. for the-
Well, I'm just
for the owner
saying,
of
I
the
mean,
property. You'd be
but I
calling
mean,
us in, and
what
we'd
is
have
the
to
remedy? And I'd like to hear your answer for the remedy, if that scenario unfolds.
We'd have to find some other space.
Right, but
If-
yeah,
if-
okay,
If
how?
that happens,
How?
go lease it from somebody else. We'd have to do that, I guess. Lease
Has
some
that
space.
been a practice in the town where are there other entities have
I mean,
leased space to
we-
accommodate the bylaw?
I think it's allowed, you can lease space.
But is it practical,
For like
David?
for our employees, for example, we could do that, we could require the employees to park elsewhere. But it's not, is it practical? No. Is it desirable? Definitely not. But I think what you're talking about is something that's speculating. You're referring to the Wendy's site, and there haven't been any complaints after the first couple of weeks when
I'm
when-
speculating because it's gonna come to me, not you, or this board. They're gonna
Hey.
point the finger at us and saying, hey, what the Christ did you do?
Well, this space is, this plaza's been there for over 40 years, all right? Have there been complaints? It's been fully occupied a good part of the time, and have there been complaints? Not that we're aware of.
No.
So the proof is there in the past experience. Here is something, we're not talking about something brand new, and we're asking you to give relief before we even start occupying it. We're talking about space that's been occupied
Well,
for
I
40
understand.
plus years.
I remember when it was Puritan, I remember
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
My issue is that, again, it sounds logical what you've portrayed, and again, you always make a cogent presentation, and I give you credit. But again, I'm looking down the line if this thing starts to blow up in the town's face. As I argued with Jam Time. Jam Time. If Lennox Street turns out to be a full open street, which it's going to be through Avalon, and who do they point the finger to? They go up to the Board of Selectmen, yes, but they also point it to us, saying, why did you approve it? Why did you open the town up to this when the parking was already tight and now you've exacerbated the problem?
Well, number one, if Lennox Street were to be opened up, that doesn't exacerbate any parking issue. It actually makes it easier for people to get through the neighborhood. Secondly, we're asking you about a particular property. We have no connection with Avalon. We have no connection with Shaw's
But
Plaza.
you were already having a problem with their construction workers. So what would
No.
what if they
Let me
can
say
find
this.
spots
No,
over there at Avalon and they're going to spill
There
over
are
now?
two things about the construction workers that I commented on. One is, even with them using the 15 spaces that are deemed to be available for this shopping plaza, we still have empty spaces at peak times on our property. The second mention of the construction workers was that even with some of them parking in the plaza, and then if Mr. Miller becomes aware of it, he asks the people in charge, could you ask your guys not to park there? Even with them taking up space and they don't belong there, we still have vacant spaces. So the point there is, actually, it supports our argument that we have enough space. And we have had enough space for 40-plus years. And if you say you're going to have to leave space open because the current bylaw doesn't allow that, requires more under the current bylaw that we passed in 2009, and yet we've been there since the early 70s, that's a little unfair.
I haven't seen an application like this in my 20-plus that's come
We may
forward.
not have. But
so,
we've got turnover here, and when we have turnover, they go for a certificate of occupancy.
All right,
It may be a unique situation.
I'm just saying, it's a little peculiar, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up on Mr. Mulvihill? I haven't seen an application like this in 40 years, along with his 20 years. What I would like to do, I don't have a problem granting 15 spaces to Shiva. I would like to leave it at that. I don't like the idea of granting spaces for some business that's not even there, because who knows? I mean, and I think, I understand your argument about, it's been this way for years on end, but as far as I'm concerned, I want to look at what the current parking bylaw requires. I'm more concerned with that than I am with what happened 40 years ago.
That's what I
And
told
the
them.
current bylaw,
Sorry.
if I could
Yeah.
continue, says, I'm quoting from 611, off-street parking must be provided to service all increases in parking demand resulting from new construction, additions, or perhaps most importantly in this case, change of use to a use requiring more parking. That could happen. Now, I understand that, we've been advised by Mr. Miller and by you that the new place will not be a food service. That's fine. But we don't know whether a food service or some other place, some other use that might require more parking may surface whenever. I'm reluctant to grant just a kind of a general overall, yeah, you can put whatever you want in there. I think that by way of meeting the difficulty that you've explained about potential customers, I think that it would be fair to say to them that you have never had a problem with the Board of Appeal acquiring the necessary extra parking spaces to accommodate the use. And I think that's true. I think we've allowed just about everyone that you've asked for. But I just don't like the idea of granting some kind of a general permit for less parking for places that we don't know about.
Would it, I
But I'm
understand.
happy to give the parking to Shiver if they want.
I understand that. Two comments on that. One, the difficulty for any landlord, any commercial landlord, any landlord, if you have a prospective tenant come along and they want to rent the space, and we say, love to have you, and it'll just take us 3 or 4 months to get a special permit, and then you'll be all set. They're not going to wait around. They're going to be gone. And we won't get that tenant, and then we'll have the same problem with the next tenant. Now, if we if we know, we're proposing retail use. I've done calculations on the idea of retail use, not food service. If a permit were granted that said, and again, I go back to the fact that over 40-plus years, there hasn't been a parking problem there, and there have been food service establishments there, there's been retail, there's been service, like Elizabeth Grady, I don't know if any hairdressers or anybody like that, but there's,
Tell you all of them.
you've had all of them, it's had all of them.
I've
And
been to
yet,
all of them. I can tell you
Dress
what
Barn
they
was
are.
there, I think, somebody, other retail operations. They've been there without difficulty. So when the bylaw talks about increases because of new construction, we don't have new
I
construction.
thought
We
change
don't have
of use is
additions.
more likely.
Change of use, we're not changing the use.
But you
It's
might.
retail. If we commit to
You might.
retail for this space, then you can, you know, you're not
But
buying.
but we don't know what the uses might be in the future.
If we agree.
Nor do
or
you.
If we agree
Nor
that.
does Mr. Miller.
If we agree that that
We don't
vacant
know.
space will be retail.
And suppose we do this for you.
Hmm.
What's to prevent anybody else in town from coming in and saying the same thing? Well, historically, we've had no problem, and the next thing you know, the provisions of the bylaw become essentially meaningless.
I don't think that's so, Mr. Riley. I think that
Well,
the
all I can
provisions of
tell
the
you is,
bylaw,
I'm not gonna go for this, other than granting 15 spaces for Shiva. I just think it's a big problem to go beyond that.
what do we do? Leave the space vacant?
Until you have a tenant, yep,
I-
and you
I-
find out who the
We-
tenant
we
is
won't
and
have
what
a
they
tenant.
require, and if they need more space,
We-
we'll give them to you.
3 or 4 months to get a permit.
I can't help that, that's the way it is.
It is,
And
but-
it's true for you, and it's true for anybody else in
And
town.
it's why
And
people
if
go
we
elsewhere.
do this for you, then we do it for everybody. What
Well-
ought to happen, if that's a big problem, then the remedy is go to the town meeting and change the bylaw so that it's more appropriate, that works better for people. But in the meantime, the bylaw is what it is, and I think we have to go by it.
I think though, Mr. Riley, that we're not talking about a change of use because the uses contemplated here are the same uses that have been going on for 40-plus years. And it is those uses, we're not talking about bringing in something new. It's the same type of uses as have been going on for all these years. And to say that we have to keep it vacant when we've had it fully occupied in the past, why aren't we grandfathered? There's an argument that we should be grandfathered. And I'd like this board to recognize that we have had adequate parking in all these years of operation. We have vacant spaces. You get on there anytime, you're gonna find vacant spaces. And you've heard me before that this bylaw requires way too much parking for different
I
types of
wouldn't
uses.
disagree with you, but the remedy is change the bylaw.
If you can't, the remedy is for the board to recognize that the particular
I don't
use,
think so.
and
I'm
the
not
experience.
gonna recognize that a
Let me interrupt
particular
you.
use, no, as far as I'm concerned, the bylaw sits there, and we're stuck with the bylaw. And if you wanna change the bylaw, go to the town meeting and change the bylaw.
6.1.12, Mr. Chairman, gives the board the right to vary the terms of the bylaw and to grant special permit if there's no substantial detriment to the neighborhood. There's no evidence of substantial detriment to the neighborhood, is my argument. I understand Mr. Riley's concerns.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have any perspectives for the other business at the moment?
No,
Well, he's
we,
just saying what people have
we're-
called want to
yeah.
look at it.
we will not talk to people who want to open up an eating establishment of any kind. We're trying to get some kind of a retail.
Is there any retail, and there's no perspective?
We've
at
had
the
a
moment?
couple. We've had a couple, but one was a jewelry store, that type of thing. So, I mean, that's what we're looking at. We are not going to entertain any offers from eating establishments of any kind.
All right, I get that, but there's still, all you've had
No,
is an
no,
inquiry.
right. I mean, you take a look at, malls throughout the region. I mean, there's vacant spaces in every mall, and, you have to do your due diligence to get somebody in there. I have nothing to do with actually putting people into the space. I take the calls and ask the questions, but I refer them to our real estate person, and then he goes on to see how serious the client is about moving in. Is he looking for $5 a square foot rent, that type of thing, so. And they make the decision, the landlord, and,
So it's not really an overnight process anyway.
no, not an overnight process, but we've moved people in I want to say 4 to 6, maybe 6 to 8 weeks.
But if we, you know, we can't start applying for a permit if we have somebody sniffing around deciding whether they might be interested, because if we don't make the deal with them, we've
No,
wasted time.
I get that.
Can't really do it
It's
until
a
we
rock
have-
and a hard place, I understand. And I don't think I disagree with anything you've said so
I don't
far
either.
tonight, but the point is, anybody else have anything else?
May I
to
make
say?
one final point, Mr. Chairman, and then
Sure,
I'll promise I'll
absolutely.
shut up.
No, absolutely.
As I look at 6112, I read 6112 as permitting an authorization, an authorizing, an authorization deviating from the provisions with reference to a proposed use or structure. And I take that to mean a particular use or structure that comes in and needs more parking, not a general, you can do whatever you want with less parking. And I promise I won't
We're not
I won't say
asking,
anymore.
we're not asking for do whatever you want. We're saying to you, we
That's what
intend to
it
bring
was.
retail in there. So we're pretty sure what we're gonna end up with. Retail use, not food service or anything like that. The structure is already there. This is not a proposed structure. It is not a proposed new use. It's a continuation of the existing uses with a 45-year-old structure. That's what we're looking for, Mr. Chairman. But I understand and
Mr. Riley, if you're willing to give the 15 spaces
I
to
am.
Shiva Bazaar,
I am.
we would know very shortly, 6 months, whether or not that's even an issue or
Okay.
it has any effect.
Okay.
But in that
Go from
interim
there.
time period,
Yep.
if
I'm willing
somebody
to do
comes
that.
forward,
Yeah, I'm willing to give the 15.
you're comfortable.
Jack, did you have something, buddy?
I think it's great that they have parking. No place else in town does. So I think it's awesome. And that's,
think we have
but
extra
I have a
parking.
problem because the tenants change. And I think if we start playing around with the bylaw, is this gonna happen every time somebody has a vacant space on Washington Street, whether it's in Norwood here or South Norwood or anyplace else, and all of a sudden, they wanna change the parking requirements? I just think we can't start doing that.
I think, Mr. Chairman, this is a
Especially
somewhat
for an
unique.
unknown
Go
tenant.
ahead.
This
I'm
is
listening.
some,
Go ahead.
yeah, but somewhat of a unique situation. You've had this here for over 40 years, it's been generally full. How can we continue to keep it full if we have to tell people, come back in 3 or 4 months, we'll see if we get you the space? They'll be gone by then.
You're 99% full, right, or 98?
No, I wouldn't say that.
So one store.
5%.
stores.
uh,
two
yeah,
two spaces.
Even if we, you know, the Shiva Bazaar space, you take that out, we're still close to 5%.
So the
4 or 5%
1,800 is
bigger.
one store or divided by two?
That's one store,
So then why,
out of
so,
44,000. 1,875 feet out of 44,000.
And they have parking.
We have more than enough parking.
Let me ask one question too. This is not a similar circumstance to the Norwood Space Center. Remember we asked that guy to come back in if there was a change down there? Is there a similarity or no?
that was use.
That was uses, and
Yeah,
what you
uses.
authorized
That had to
there,
do with uses, yeah.
that you
It
authorized
wasn't a
there,
parking thing, no.
retail use in a
Yeah.
manufacturing zone up to 20,000 square feet
Right.
without having to come back in every time we get a new tenant, so
Right.
long as we didn't exceed the 20,000 feet in the
Yeah.
aggregate.
All right.
So it's a
Little
little bit different
different
approach,
situation.
but you,
I'm trying to say.
but you did show a great deal of flexibility on that,
I know.
and it worked out, and it helped that site. I
Yeah.
worked on that project.
I know you did.
This is, I think the board should look at flexibility on this. An existing site, we're not talking about new property, that has more than enough space. I don't mean to kind of be off, I know Mrs. Anderson had
No,
a.
I hear you. I'm gonna recognize Mary, please. if you got something.
Well, I would like to see a compromise here, because I probably have visited every store in that whole plaza. So, and going back, you're 30 years, I'm been 30 years there too. So in any case, I have never had a parking problem. And I have been down there, Becky, you know, down there visiting the site, morning, noon, and night. And no problem with parking. So inasmuch as this owner has had this area for that number of years, I think there should be a compromise here to give him some relief. Because if he has to keep coming in, when he was already granted for what he had, the space that was there, parking many years ago, I would like to see something to help him out.
Are you in line with Phil's comment?
Sort of, but not exactly. I really feel very strongly that this owner is being punished for something that was available to him many years ago. And because, did you say 2009, there were changes?
The bylaw changed almost in its entirety in 2009.
Okay.
I don't know the exact details
So therefore,
of
now
parking,
he
but
should suffer, I don't believe he should suffer because of that. But I think at this point, because of the bylaw, I'd like to see some compromise in the amount of spaces.
Would a possible compromise, Mr. Chairman, be that for the moment we give them the 15 for Shiva and the 7 they want for the other opening?
that'd be fine.
Which would take you where, David?
That would, I mean, we've got 154. Right now, we need
And that would be a
141.
compromise.
If I add these up, I get 26, no, wait a minute. 23,
7.
23 spaces.
15 and 7.
So it means,
22, right?
you know, on,
Yeah.
on paper, we're short.
164,
This is 23,
164. Great,
we got 154 there.
yep,
We think for this space here, we would need 23,
right.
roughly.
Sure,
So
by
23 and 141 is, yeah, you're right.
Sure,
23 and
by
141 is 164. We've got 154.
It's actually
I'd be willing to go
163.
along with the 15 plus 7 if that's a
I would- I
compromise.
got-
I got
along
15
with
and
that.
15 plus 7 is 22.
And the one
141
space for storage.
Okay, my bad.
Right.
One space for
Maybe
storage
23.
is
Right, so it's
23
10
Right.
plus
Oh,
141
one
required.
space.
No.
So the compromise would be
15
I think
for
what Phil
15
Shiva,
for
7.
Shiver and 7.
That You're effectively deeming that for those, if we rent those out, by my calculation, what we need and what we have already, we're a little bit short, but that would be the relief you'd be giving. Yeah,
So the relief total would be 161.
you'd be authorizing a total of that 154 spaces
15
in
and
lieu of,
7
in lieu of
plus 5,
164. 141 required plus the 23 we're trying to fill, the space we're trying to fill, makes 164, and we have 154 available now. So it's only 10 spaces.
10.
And they're different times a day, so I don't think you're taking a big risk on that.
All right.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, before we, anybody from the audience, and all I ask, just to identify yourself, please, and your name and address if you could. Anything from the audience on this matter? Seeing none,
Geez, nobody shops there.
everybody
No, they
shops
wanna
there.
shop.
I
there.
do.
Everybody shops there. My wife shops there, I know that.
Can I just say something?
Sure, absolutely.
Blue Hills is leaving.
Yes,
The notice is on the door, June 6th.
right,
What's gonna happen with that?
another bank. We
Another
have-
bank?
We have,
You already have a signed
Yeah.
lease?
right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion to close the hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion on the floor to close, Mr. Mulvihill, seconded by Mr. Riley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I make a motion to approve Mr. Riley's recommendation based upon Mrs. Anderson's comments of the compromise of 15 for Shiva, 7 for the future use.
And one extra that they needed
and one
or
extra.
something.
Can we, again, I know you just closed it, but I mean, so we're clear on this. Are we talking about, effectively, you're making a finding that the 154 spaces is deemed appropriate for what we would calculate under the bylaw to be 164 spaces.
Full occupancy.
Yeah. That 154 will suffice for this shopping plaza, where 164 is the calculation that we believe, if we apply the bylaw and the board's previous actions.
It will suffice for the uses that we are now aware of.
Fully
But
occupied.
not a
Grocery
but
store
not some
and a
general
retail.
thing, depending
And if
on
there's a
who else,
change
you know,
down the
comes
road
in.
of the nature of
That's
use, we'd
something
come
else,
back.
yeah.
You know, like say if same old pizza wanted to gobble up 4 stores.
That's a whole different.
Then they have a
Yeah,
different
yeah,
type of
yeah, yeah,
requirement,
different-
correct.
All right,
Different deal.
All right.
All
Okay.
right, so just for the record, so we're gonna approve the 164 total
Well,
Right.
the motion's on the floor.
Yep.
so.
Motion's, all right, so the motion's on the floor, you heard it. All those
You
in
need a
favor?
second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Perry. I'm just writing it down so I'm not there.
Yeah,
Okay, well, doesn't
it was your recommendation.
matter. My motion,
Oh, well, then Riley's motion, Perry.
Mr. Riley's motion.
all right.
Yep,
Second
I
by
thought you had
Mr.
that
Perry.
anyway.
yep.
All right, so all those in favor of the motions as stated?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye. Jack, 5-0, all right, motion
Thank you.
passes.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
good,
See you in a while.
very good.
You know, you're only scheduled for 10 minutes.
15.
No, 10.
You started late.
No, let's keep it 10 minutes.
I
I'm
tried
getting,
not
I'm
to
trying to
speak.
get out of here. I would have tried to leave here, but.
61 Endicott's the next one up.
Thank you all.
Okay, Mr. Miller, take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
How are you?
How are you, sir?
Good.
If you could just do me a favor, just state your name again for the record.
So, my name's Daniel Jones. This is, I guess, our third hearing for about 61 Endicott special permit application. This is my father, Roger Jones. He's obviously not only my dad, but also a backer of the business too, so he might have a thing or two or point.
Muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Those days are long gone.
There you go.
Moral support.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Just to recap, we had, the issues the last time was the area itself, and there's other problems down there too. It was the parking,
There were, it seemed to me that there were four main issues. And they were obviously pedestrian safety, and linked to that was vehicle safety, right? So that would be one point, is the safety of the people as they walk around the facility. Another concern was lighting, and parking was the third issue, and then the overall traffic flow. Right? So there was those four main issues. That's the way I understood it.
I don't know why I got
can you refresh my memory, which building is the one yours is
Jack.
around the back where you wanna put the?
Correct, for lack of a better, it's in the back right corner.
All
There-
right.
It's called Building 34, I can point it out, and it was,
It's right here.
correct.
It's in pink.
Yeah. So it's the pink one here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tom, if I may, so, when you were in here, we were trying to delineate and, answer the question of how many spots you were promised that will be exclusively for you, and how do we police those? And, they were identified, and I guess, Tom, if you give me a little latitude here,
Yeah, I'm with you.
Diane was gonna chime in on this, Counselor Garrity Hall for the Commerce Center, was gonna show us how that was gonna be accomplished, is that correct?
Correct, so what we've submitted to the board, I think as, when we were last here discussing some of the issues, we wanted to submit some further information from the engineer regarding the parking study that we've had done for the site. And we believe we've submitted a number of plans that show a number of different things. The parking for Mr. Jones's business will be down over, in the
Yeah.
back there and
Right, with
over-
the yellow stripes are, right?
Correct, and on the other side by the brook there, Mr.
Here?
Mulvihill?
Or here?
Um,
Here?
Right over by the brook, right there.
Or here?
Yes. So we've identified those for this business. Again, I think we talked about, we could put signs up, but the enforcement of that would be very difficult to do. We've notified other tenants. I have owners here as well as the management if there's any specific questions as well. We talked about putting signs up, but again, without somebody being there constantly, I don't know that that's achievable to really police it, but we've talked to the other tenants and let them know that parking was for this business. And they've acknowledged that. We are in the process of, we've changed the traffic flow pattern as we discussed before, so that's been done. It's been deemed successful thus far. So you come in, you go around, and it's one way over by Building 34. We are gonna put some striping in, we're gonna put arrows, we have a plan that we submitted showing all the signage that's going in, as well as all of the markings on the pavements. We are in the process of working on the lighting. We've gotten half of the lighting changed out on all the buildings, to put in LED lighting that will help with the, seeing at night. So we're in the process of doing that. We did submit the report of the traffic study from the engineer as well, which does indicate what she identified as the issues that we talked about the last time we were here, and what her recommendations were to address those issues. So we think that vehicular safety is going to be improved and enhanced tenfold, pedestrian safety as well. We are proposing some pedestrian walkways around the building for Mr. Jones. As you can see in yellow, there's a little walkway going from the parking in the back up to the building. We're gonna have a walkway around the building that's delineated. We have other walkways that we have added that have also been recommended as well. So a number of recommendations, as is set forth in that report, have been done or are in the process of being done. We haven't gotten all the striping done yet. We're in the process of doing that. So we think that this study and the recommendations that we are proposing will make this property safer, as well as will make any issues around the building that Mr. Jones is going in will be adequate for his business as well.
All right, can you do one favor while I have you on the floor?
Yes.
Several members of the board have been very passionate about the safety issue. Can you expound a little bit on your traffic pattern improvement?
Yes, so the traffic has been changed, as you can see on the map. Traffic will come in one way, this way, okay? This
Yeah.
is the Endicott Street here, so you come in and you will only be able to go around this way. You won't be able to take a right anymore.
That's already in effect,
It's already in
right?
effect.
Yeah, because I went down there yesterday. So to get to this fellow's place, you have
You
to
have
go all the way around.
Yes, where you can see those black lines
Yeah,
is
it's
where
not,
you would,
it's not like it's an inconvenience or anything, but
no. it-
that was the one thing I noticed, and we were joking about the.
So I think that one
Cut
of the
through
issue,
there.
and I think that Mr. Riley and I think Mrs. Anderson raised before, is going around the building where Mr. Jones is gonna be is a little tight. So having it now one way instead of two ways, where traffic can come in both ways, will absolutely increase the safety. You won't have cars trying to hit one another, or you won't have people walking around. With one-way traffic, it gives people more space, as well as it just makes it safer. We've put signs up. We had one of our artists draw a slow sign on one of the buildings as you come around the corner. So, and we have much more signage that's going in.
All right,
as well.
let me ask this, have these been recognized as public ways or no?
No,
They
this
have
is all
not.
private property.
So how do you enforce the one-way street sign other than logic?
Well, we have the signage going up.
I'm just
We have-
thinking
we have-
future along, as soon as the first accident happens, because somebody doesn't know how to read, for lack of a better term, and does whatever they feel like doing.
Well, we're hopeful that a lot of our businesses that are there, that during the week, they will get used to the new traffic pattern. The weekend traffic, again, they kind of come that way anyways, and they exit around the pond. And we have people that are out there directing traffic on the weekends. We have college students or high school
We have the big
students.
orange barriers too, that's kinda hard to miss.
Have
So-
you ever considered, I mean, I certainly wouldn't make a recommendation, at least right now, but have you ever considered a detail on the weekends?
I'm sorry, what?
A
A
detail.
police detail on the weekends.
But if it's busy enough, we definitely would consider it.
Yeah. Again, I think that the traffic for the weekends, because the retail is just at the front.
All right,
Okay. So-
we can revisit that.
Yeah.
Let me, all right, let me open it up and just have some comments from the board. please.
I don't wanna take away from Mr. Jones.
No, it's all right. Do you wanna continue, or are you good? with
Well,
what
at
you
at
said?
some point, but I would like to hear what you guys have.
Now,
Okay.
did you say that you had to stay open on Sunday?
Um,
Would you be willing to forego that?
I would. Do 6 day a week, is that, if that's what you're asking? The Sunday would look identical to, the Saturday class structure.
I think it's just, The reason I say that is it was brought up last hearing from some of the members and one of the neighbors that it's, you know, it's a big complex, it's very busy, and I don't think this board initially thought it was a 7-day-a-week venture down there, and it's turning into it. And
So, I don't mean to interrupt.
no, go ahead,
So,
please,
kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about, right, is,
because I want to say yes to you.
yeah.
You know what I
understand.
mean? I do. I mean,
I
not
wanted
that
to-
I'd frequent your club, but I just, I mean,
All the points that the board has made are all, you know, good points that, you know, it's taking care of the people of that work there, that frequent there. I mean, nobody's going to be arguing that we should keep people less safe, right? The Norwood Commerce Center has accommodated a lot of the requests that you guys have come up with, right? That they've also gone out and gone to McKenzie Engineering. They've created this totally neutral traffic analysis, right? And their line is, you know, the overall net increase in vehicle trips is not expected to have a significant impact on the overall traffic flow, period. So they've come up with that, and they said their major issues were one-way circulation, proper travel lane width, striped parking, striped crosswalks, and the one-way entrance. So I went and I took a couple photos too, so you can kind of see some of them. But as far as lighting, this was taken at 8, and this is kind of more of a joke photo, but this was, you can read, you know, my entire watch, you know, at night.
We believe
I
you.
just want proof, right?
timestamp.
They've added, you know, so not only have they added new stripes, but they've added, you know, additional safety measures. You can see some of the cones in there. You can see some of the orange cones in here, right? And some of these orange barriers as well, right? And you can see a car traveling through that corner. That's one of the corners that was in a matter of concern, right? This was the other corner, I think, Mr. Riley, pardon me, excuse me, was mostly concerned with. So they've added that graphic art, and here's a better angle of it.
No, I know the car.
And here's a good one. I know that car's a little off somewhat in the distance, but you can kind of see how it, there is adequate space, you know, for that turn, especially now that it's one way. Here's an old photograph of the parking and the lines that were down and the amount of spaces that were for the old parking. And here are a couple photos of the relined parking spot with additional spaces.
Pass. Do you want to pass that down?
Yeah, I mean, I applaud the Commerce Center for taking making the effort to do the traffic study and everything. I'm just, you know, like I said, I'm concerned. My issue was the 7-day-a-week venture down there, and one stays open 7 days a week. They all want to stay open, blah, 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 blah. So that's been flogged through, and like I said, I'm very appreciative of the traffic study. Is the lighting, Diane, is the lighting done down there? Is it,
Not fully done.
when is it gonna be completed?
Within 2 weeks.
Couple weeks. So I also, just as a reminder too, you know, this is commercial, as you know, industrial, it's manufacturing property. I know that this application is a little unusual, but, you know, it's buildings that are there that are gonna be used. So if it's not for this use, which we think is a lesser innocuous use, you know, Norfolk Mosquito was in there before. They had 25 employees, they had lots of trucks, they had chemicals. So we think that this is a better use for the neighbors. We think that, you know, people coming and going for, you know, exercise and
While
for
I-
gym use. we
While
think
I
is-
got
is
you,
a
I'm
better-
sorry to interrupt you, but while I got you, I didn't read the letter, but what did the health guy say? Did he clean up?
He.
Tom, may I see?
Yes, he
this
did clean up,
one
he
picture I really
recognized
want.
that there was one issue. He spoke directly to the neighbors regarding the complaints. The employee that was driving too fast as well has since been let go, and the tenant has encouraged the neighbors to call if there are any further issues. and adequately, I think, addressed the issue. And it was that one issue with the speeding and one issue with the mattresses, I believe, that were.
This is a list of tenants.
Right, most of our tenants don't have employees. We have a lot of storage. We have a lot of single, artisans, so artists and photographers and things of that nature don't have employees. We believe there's probably about 120 employees for all of the
But it
businesses.
generates customer traffic, correct?
Not really.
So what are these, all internet companies?
No, photographers, there's storage, there's landscapers, there's masons, and there's, right, cabinet
Excuse me, we have a
makers.
list of the tenants.
And things of that nature, so, it's not a lot of customer based.
Okay.
The customer base are more in the retail space, which is in the front, and that's been designated for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. A lot of the other businesses have more of the trucks and more of the commercial vehicles that go in.
Okay, thanks.
Okay?
Phil, you're up, please.
Well, I don't know that I have any questions. I do have comments. I don't know whether you want to reserve those until the time that we're discussing what to do with the case, but I do have a lot of problems with this site.
All right, let's hold off on
If
that.
you want to go to them, I'll be happy
Questions or
to,
anything,
I'll be happy to
anything
go to
like
them if you want.
My word has been safety all along. Okay, now you have parking out back, which is marked off, I saw that. And then you have to walk around from the back, around here, which is narrow.
That's like, there's gonna be there's a side entrance right here, right
Oh,
at the
there's gonna be a
corner.
new entrance?
It's not a new, that's the front
That's the one I
entrance.
fear. That one comes right out on the street.
No. So that entrance that you're pointing to is right here, and that is not going to be the entrance. The entrance that
Oh, there
I'm
will
going
be
to
one out
use
to the side.
is almost right. Yes, it is right here. That there's a door right there. You're
So it's not gonna be in this narrow space?
correct.
That changes that. That entrance,
Might have just saved
to
you
me, was
Right,
terrified.
That is pretty
No,
bad.
you come
I
right out on
can't
the
see that
street.
either.
right.
It's on the street, it's very narrow, so that's gone,
Not the entrance.
okay.
Jack?
Yeah, actually, I used to work down in that area when I was going to school, and I used to get lost in there. And it's very confusing, there's no question about it. But the question, I did request that we got a list of the tenants, which was submitted. But
He
I'd
says
like
the
to
new
carry it
entrance is
one
here.
step further as to where the tenant's located. Because right now, if it's just done alphabetically.
Mm-hmm.
And you must have 100 tenants down there. And there's a ton of them. And I was wondering if there's a way that they could be identified in which structure they're in,
Mm-hmm.
if that's a possibility.
We have a chart that shows who's in each building, color coded.
We have that.
But we don't.
I know, we have.
We don't have
Anybody
that.
wanted it.
Yeah, okay. I think we should have that. So, but other than that, like I said, I worked there as a kid, when I was in junior high, I think.
You've dealt with a lot of traffic studies and traffic consultants over your career.
A lot of them.
I mean, have you reviewed that? I mean,
Right now, there is, you could not do a traffic study down here. It's that confusing. I think it is. It's that confusing.
So this report is a traffic study.
It's a parking study.
It's a part.
It's
part-
parking, yeah.
But they've also done a traffic flow, but
they did the trip generator.
how many
right?
more trips per day? So
Has
they
that
have-
been done?
It's in
Yeah.
this.
It's in there?
It
Okay.
is. And their conclusion is overall net increase in vehicle trips is not expected to have a significant impact to overall traffic flow. Plus, they've also increased parking. I kind of wanted to, I feel like there might be a perception of it being this free-for-all, but I wanted to galvanize that and get away from that perception and show that it's more engineer approved, that this is an independent company that has come in, mapped it out, and presented the results. Their findings, bullet points of one-way traffic, the striped parking, the crosswalks, have all been, and if you've gone down there recently, already been addressed. Clear signage, lights going up, the walkways, the parking and the lighting. Those are all have been addressed head on.
So you're CrossFit, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what happens if you go through the roof, like a lot of these CrossFits have? As far as membership, are you gonna put a cap on your membership?
That'd be a great problem.
I understand that, but my problem would be on our lap if it
Right.
did turn into it, like the last application.
So it's a.
They don't point the finger at you, they come back to us.
Right. I think,
What's your hours of operations projected to be?
so it's throughout the day, and it's in the packet as well. It's in the,
right.
that you guys received. And there would be a 5 a.m., a 9 a.m., and then that's 1 hour classes, closed, any other time it would be closed, right? In the evening, generally it's a 4, 5, and then 6, maybe a 4 and a 6. On my opening schedule might be lighter than.
Yeah, we already
and more
went through this as
established.
far as class sizes,
Right,
right?
right.
So you have to cap your class sizes, right?
No, not necessarily, but I would say that a class of 15 people is a very big class. Not many
No,
gyms.
my point was that it would show that the clientele would be sporadic. But anyway,
A class of 15 would be a large class. That would be mostly the gyms that are in a city, metropolis. It's not gonna, I mean, again, I'd love to have this problem.
all right, any other questions from the
Could you
board?
move the door out here? Because you're still
There are,
coming around,
I would
the-
have loved to, but there are,
there's still packing.
There's a guy there.
It's very, very narrow going
There's-
around the, no, I know,
Yeah.
but I
well,
didn't know
there's
whether
actually
he spotted
photos
there
there,
might be.
and you can see the walkway that they've painted.
I was there today.
Yeah,
It was not satisfactory.
It's not a walkway. It's a
No.
line on the,
That-
it's a line
no.
on the back, it's a line on
No.
the driveway.
I've spent a lot of time there. I owned a business, I'm for business, but I'm also concerned about safety.
mhm.
And I'm sorry, I just do not see it in that area. And if parking, we were there at 5:30 tonight, there were many cars parked here. How are you gonna tell? So my concern is the walkway is very narrow, this is very narrow, and again, your door is out to a very narrow area.
So to meet the town's requirements, it has to be 5 feet from the building, from what I've understood. And that line is 5 feet all the way around the building. So according to the bylaws for
Well, I
painted
will have to look at that 5
sidewalks,
feet.
that meets that bylaw. So if we're gonna
That's
go by.
what you're referring to?
Correct.
That's
Did you see that today?
the walkway, the white line?
Oh, yeah, I know where it is, yeah.
But it,
I've seen
Yeah.
it, yeah.
but it wasn't a regular walkway.
No, it's not a walkway, it's lots of, it's paint in the driveway.
Well, I'm gonna reserve comments till we get to the comment section, cause
Yep.
are you gonna ask for a
I'll-
vote tonight, Tom? Or are you gonna close it, or what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think it looks that way, unless there's anything else anybody else wants to.
Yeah, I just have one more thing, which I had brought up before, which is and Diane did provide us with a list of tenants.
Oh,
And
sorry.
there's really quite a few.
Sorry.
It's 14 buildings.
And what I would like to do is take that a step further, which is, I think, what I sort of indicated at the last meeting, as to where they're located, if that's not a problem. And I think that would help us too. Because, again, you're listing, how many
I think it's about 95.
95 different tenants.
Yeah, they're all in the back,
Yeah, they're all in the back.
right in the wrong place.
How many, yes, I mean, there's a bunch of buildings there, and I just thought it would be good if we had an inventory of what is down there. I mean, because this really doesn't indicate, it gives us names of what's there, but if there was a location, I think we should have that. Like who's in
Thank
what
you.
building, that type of thing. That's
Do you
all.
want us to try to fill it out now?
No,
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 not at all.
no, but I
No.
tell you what, that can only help.
Yeah.
Most of the retail is in the front section of the buildings. That is where, on the weekends, most of the people are spending their time. In the back, it's the dog training centers and the no people are driving and parking, dropping their dog off back there. That's all, the moving, the buildings back there, the people working on their auto body shops are all back there. So they've separated the two where, you know, did I say residential? The
Retail.
Retail, thank you, is towards the pond side, and businesses that go in and do their business throughout the day is in the back.
Is there anything from the audience?
Could I just make a comment? I don't want to sound.
Sure.
Certainly, just do me a favor, just identify yourself one more time.
I'm Roger Jones. I'm not only Dan's dad, but I'm also a backer of this business and interested in the business succeeding in the right spot.
Good. Yep.
And I was doing a backer of his last business, which was successful, so I'm proud of him.
You
But-
did a good job. He's makes a nice presentation.
Well,
I
thanks.
agree.
Thank you. I don't take all the credit for that. The concerns that you raised, that Daniel has expressed to me, are the absolute right-on concerns for anybody just trying to participate here or be a part of the gym. So, good job all the way around. It sounds to me, that this is kind of the way it's worked out, has been a win in a way. As you've raised the right issues, I think the facility has responded and is eager to respond to what you've suggested. So look forward to it, and thank you. I think Daniel articulated the concerns that he had, and which were apparently the same concerns that you folks had.
All right, tell you what, let's, if, at the chance of inconveniencing you and everybody else for that matter, can we continue it one more time? If that's possible, Ramona. I know it's 21st, we're tied up, only to get the
Continue.
list of what
Right,
Jack's
right.
asked for, just so everybody can have a layout of what business is where. I know you just basically explained it, if we could see it in writing, I think that would be more defined. I mean, I think it's clear, I think everybody wants us to succeed, I think everybody wants it to happen, I think everybody's clearly voiced their opinion, and I think everybody is under the impression that it's very difficult to perfect an imperfection, which is that whole complex. But I think the improvements have definitely been made, or at least attempted to be made, where it would go in your favor if we had all the cards on the table. So if we could go to the next meeting just to see that blueprint and layout of where the businesses are, it may be a little more persuasive to, you know, vote in the favor of this happening.
I'm fine with another continuance. If you could explain to me exactly why that would be the tipping point, right? That seems.
I think
the
honestly,
sticky
unless
point.
I'm wrong, unless someone wants to speak for me, it'd be more peace of mind, just so they could see, just see the layout of the place as to where 95 tenants lay.
Well,
Right.
well,
But I think.
go ahead,
I
Harry.
Yeah, absolutely, continue.
I've already seen
Yeah.
the tenants in
Yeah,
the back
yeah.
there, right?
As have I.
Yeah, they're all in the
Yeah, yeah.
back.
They're all in
Yeah.
the back. The retail, as you said, it was in the front. There's a woodworking shop right next to you.
Mhm.
And this is why apparently there can't be a door here, because their area is here.
The
There are
power
pipes running along the side of the
power
wall.
cables run along the wall.
Yeah, couldn't do
Exactly.
anything with
So again, it's just, and again, at tonight and other nights when I've been down there, these spaces have been half filled. When I first went, they were all filled, now they're half filled at night. So I don't know, for people that are going in there, really, I worried about the safety of it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, from a procedural standpoint, the applicant would have to agree to a 30-day extension. But I gotta tell you, I don't really need it. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. I don't know about Mr. Anderson, Mr. Perry, and Mr. Riley, but, you know, I've been down there 1,000 times. I think that Jack worked there, Phil and Mary have actually been down there 10 times. It's just, you know, I don't know. That's my own thought, but you make the call.
I'm all right with further discussion, I'll keep it going. I
Okay,
mean,
well-
the only argument I could make to your point, which is extremely valid and fully valid, is I mean, they do have the layout. Could we go a little more and ask or require that that the walkway is painted, for lack of a better term? Calling it a walkway, it's sectioned off. I mean, some people are gonna have to realize they're down there at their own peril at some point.
Well,
Well,
if
I mean,
I
I get it.
if I
It's not a
may,
walk.
but if I may, if we're gonna, I think, well, I want to say something that, and I know Phil is ready to pounce here with his own opinion here, but my issue is one of which, what Councilor Garrity Hall said, something's gonna go in there. Something's gonna go in there. Now, what if Mr. Jones is denied, what's the next use? Are we gonna say no to that? I don't know. I'm just saying, if we, are concerned about traffic, then I don't know what other, well, I'm sure there's other uses down there that are less, human intensive, if you would, as far as, some of the ones on the list, but, again, the applicant has come forward, through the landlord with a detailed parking explanation of it, right, wrong, or indifferent. They did take the time in which to do it. They've tried to make amends as far as what, the complex looks like, other than taking a building down. I don't know. That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't want to take Mr. Riley's time, because I know he wanted to be heard, so, sorry, Phil.
Most of the people, I've been down there, I've talked to a number of people down there. I've talked to the guy who's in the same building. He's indicated he's gonna be there for quite a while. I talked to the people a door or so away who are masonry people that are storing vehicles in there. I've talked to the people that service the Jaguar cars that are right across the street from there. I've talked to people who were doing cabinetry work. These people are all in the back. I don't think we need to have a further description of where they are. They're all there. They're not in the front. They're all in the back, right in the way. And quite frankly, it's one of the reasons that what we previously did makes sense. That we allowed for 2 or 3 days on the weekend some retail use in the front of the building on days that you don't have all these people running around back there. You see all kinds of things there. The other day when I was there, right across from where this building would be is the Dalton Company that is, basically they deal with trash and junk. And they had a truck there with all kinds of junk all over the place that they were taking in and out, almost across from where the new entrance supposedly is going to be. Well, how are you gonna have people trying to get in the entrance with these people with junk over there? I mean, there's a reason that this is a manufacturing area. It's designed for industrial use. You look at the buildings, they're all close together, the visibility is poor, there are no sidewalks. It is, in my opinion, dangerous for pedestrians. The walkway that they're talking about is not a walk, it's a line, a painted line in the driveway. Whether you come out the door in the front or the door on the side, you're gonna be stepping right out into traffic coming by. Most people aren't paying any attention to this one-way thing anyway. When you come around, if you're driving one way and you're trying to exit, you have to turn right, cross the incoming traffic, go down past the craft businesses, and around by the pond and out. When I did that, I was almost hit by somebody coming straight out the way he would normally have gone, who apparently completely ignored the sign and just kept plowing right on out that way. The McKenzie company that looked at this place identified all sorts of problems: inadequate signage, no defined circulation pattern, inadequate number of striped parking places, vehicles parked randomly, which they'll probably continue to do, and, most importantly in my view, lack of accommodations for pedestrians, no crosswalks or dedicated parking areas. If we were to act favorably on this matter, we are required under the bylaw to make a finding that the proposed use, which this is obviously, will not might not, or could not, will not have adverse effects which overbalance its beneficial effects for either the neighborhood or the town, in view of the particular characteristics of the site and the proposal in relation to that site. Basically, it's very similar to the requirements that we had under the old bylaw, where we had to look at the site and the use and how they went together. In my opinion, it doesn't go together. If you look at the various things that we're supposed to consider, one of the main ones for this particular operation, in my view, is number 2 on circulation. You look at circulation and it says Increases in average daily and peak hour traffic are adverse effects, even if coupled with capacity increases, maintaining the level of service. And then the next sentence I think is quite important. To avoid adversity, pedestrian and vehicular movement to, from, and within the site should be safe and convenient. I happen to think that it's neither.
Can I,
It's certainly not convenient, and I don't think that it's safe. I would not be prepared to sign on to something that said that the proposed use will not have adverse effects overbalancing the beneficial effects. I think that, and you look at the uses, you know, what do you, somebody said, what's gonna happen if they don't have this? There's all kinds of people that are down there. I'm sure they'll rent it to somebody else who will be, who knows what, a wood craftsman, a plumbing supply, maybe asbestos abatement, property management, a doggy daycare, an there's all kinds of things that it can be leased to.
big space.
I just don't think that this is, if somebody wanted to have a retail area designed, and they designed this and told you, here's your retail area, you'd probably sue them for trying to put that this way. It is just simply not designed as a retail area. I'm sorry, I can't say.
May I?
Sure.
So, your point about the adverse impact is not true according to what McKenzie Engineering has said. They said it will not have an adverse impact, so I don't know why that's a point. The traffic flow is clearly stated with signs, and the walkways are to the letter of the law according to the town of Norwood bylaws. So, for the last gentleman in the hearing before, you were a stickler on the rules on some of those points,
Still.
but yet, when things do meet those rules, you're not. So you can't really be on either side of the line here. So the Norwood Commerce Center and this engineering company has shown that this can be done safely by the letter of the law. I don't know what more. Everything meets the requirements that you or your predecessors have set up. I'm kind of racking my head because it makes sense to me, but I'm not on board. So.
I might respond to that.
Sure.
You know, I have never seen, and I've seen probably more expert reports of one kind or another over 50 years of trying cases than anybody in the room. I have never seen one where somebody hired someone where they said you can't do it. They all say it can be done. And you wouldn't hire them if they didn't say that it could be done. That's not to denigrate
But that's assuming that they're not doing their
give these people a bad
job.
time. Maybe they're right, but this is exactly the kind of thing that you would expect to see. If it didn't say this, you wouldn't see it.
I
There
think
is
that's-
one thing, if you don't mind, sir, let me finish.
Yes, sir.
There is one thing that I might put out as a potential suggestion. There is, in the last sentence of this report, the following suggestion. We do suggest that the proposed improvements, as shown on so forth and so on, are implemented regardless of what happens with the space at Building 34. The reason I make mention of that, at the moment, we're left with a proposal that is dependent to some extent on things that haven't been done that people say are going to be done. Maybe they will be done. We don't know. The owner of the property is not before us, so we really don't have authorization or jurisdiction. You know,
I
the
believe
person
you.
that's before us is the tenant. We don't have the authorization, I don't think, to require them to do all of this stuff. What I'm suggesting is this: the possibility of withdrawing this application without prejudice so that they can come in again, waiting to see what the area looks like when all of these things that are proposed are actually done and on the ground, and we can go down and at that point make, I would suggest, a considerably better judgment than trying to make a judgment based on maybe they'll do this, maybe they'll do that, or whatever. A possibility as an alternative.
Could I do a follow-up on that? So my understanding, and correct me all if I'm wrong, is that the parking stripes designated to accommodate the parking has been done. I think Dan showed a picture of that. The lighting has been initiated but not completed just yet. It'll take 2 more weeks, but it's been initiated. Dan showed a picture at 8 o'clock with substantial lighting, even though it's not completed. The complete change of the traffic has already been done. As you'd noted, the pedestrian walkway, I appreciate the definition of walkway. It means designation, I'm paraphrasing, the designation of the space for walk, indicated as such, has been done. So, to Mr. Riley's point, the only thing that seems yet to be done, in addition to the request over by this gentleman, Mr. Perry, is the completion of the lighting, which the owners have committed to do, to finish. They've started rather substantially, to finish within a 2-week period. So, in 2 weeks, the remaining lighting will be done, and what has been done to date has been responsive to the question, the issues, and the recommendations. So it would seem to me that what has been deemed as important by you folks, addressed by a responsible professional organization, and responded to by the owners, has been done based on good business sense, good community sense, and good faith.
Well, and again, well, not to belabor Phil's point, but, if we granted an extension or asked for more time, the applicant would have to agree to it as well. I don't know if restarting the hearing would make sense if the applicant agrees to this. Isn't it one half dozen the other?
The only thing is, if the only thing that's left is the lighting, I'm not particularly persuaded that the one-way traffic is gonna make a whole lot of difference, if that's the extent of what they're gonna do. So, I mean, if that's all that's left, then maybe there isn't anything more to do.
So there is more to do. They haven't finished the signage, they haven't finished painting on the pavement, the arrows indicating the directions. They haven't finished all that yet. It's been very wet, so they haven't been able to finish all that. So it's not been fully completed, it's in the process of being done. It should be done fairly quickly. If the issue is around this building, I think I'm understanding that we would be amenable to putting in speed bumps if that would make the board feel that it would be more safer. We could try to put some barriers around the walkway around the building to make it more safer for pedestrians. There's things that we can do if that would make the board feel more comfortable with the pedestrian safety. We think that the traffic is, again, I think that the report tells us that. We think it just makes sense that it's one way instead of 2 ways. We think that that is going to help improve the safety as well. So I would just like to throw that out, and I think it's up to Mr. Jones about the timing.
Well, if I'm reading the tea leaves wrong, you gotta convince this side of the table, but I don't know if that's possible, even with barriers and what Ms. Garrity Hall said. I mean, is that gonna persuade you?
I don't know, have to see what it looked like, I guess. I don't know.
So then, again, that being said, if, I'll leave it to the applicant and to the Commerce Center. I mean, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry if I'm overstepping. my
I'm
bounds.
listening, I'm listening.
I'd leave it to the Commerce Center and to the applicant to discuss whether they would like to entertain Mr. Riley's motion to withdraw without prejudice, or would you grant the board a 45-day extension to implement what Ms. Councilor Garrity Hall said regarding Jersey barriers and finishing of the lighting and signage on the buildings, and a plethora of stuff that still needs to be done to might appease members Riley and
Speaking for the Commerce
Anderson.
Center,
Sure.
my name Paul
Your
Roy.
name
Sorry.
first.
Paul Roy.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Paul Roy. Sorry.
Owners of the Commerce
Say
Center.
that one more time, I'm sorry.
Paul Roy.
All right.
Everything that was in that
Flip one
traffic
this way.
report, we've contracted out to do anyway, so it's going to be done.
Do you have a
So,
time frame on that?
I mean, well within the 45 days, so I think if the applicant is willing to extend to 45 days, the Commerce Center's already committed to the work. Maybe when you see it completed, you'll have a different perspective, maybe not, but at least let us complete the work.
Honestly, I think at this point, it's your only hope. And believe me, every member's entitled to their own opinion, okay? And personally, I wanna see it happen, but I do understand the points of view on the safety issues especially. It's up to you. I'd rather see you go that route. I don't wanna advise you.
But could I ask a question?
Sure.
If the work in the 45 days that's been defined gets done, is it the sense of the board that approval would be granted, or is this just a waste of our time?
See, I can't speak for the other
Well,
board members.
that's
but
what I said, I mean, my tea leaves aren't saying what's going on the other
It's the
side of
only
the
hope
table
at
here.
this point, then I think it's a chance worth.
But it seems that you appropriately have specifically identified areas that you can specifically point to. Traffic one way, it can't be better than one way, you know, it's,
I know where you're going with this, Mr. Jones, and I'll beat you to the punch. Is that we could approve it, or I can make a motion right now to approve the application based upon the foregoing conditions. Jersey barrier, finishing the lighting, finishing the siding, signage, blah, 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 blah. I just don't know if that side of the table over here is comfortable with it. And I say that with all due respect because I agree with their concerns. It is tough. But again, everybody's entitled to their opinion on this. It's
No,
five different
understood, and that's
divergent
why-
opinions.
that's why-
So, you know, I just don't
Right.
know, and I think you'd have to speak to the two members that have expressed those
Right.
concerns, whether that would be something that is plausible.
Well, the only point I would make with respect to that is that the expert who did the work said that they recommended that the improvements be done anyway, so.
So I guess it comes down to whether you agree with the use, Phil. If I made that motion with those, you know, the last paragraph of Mackenzie in there to approve, well, that's a roll of the dice,
It is.
you know, so.
I mean, that does make sense to me. I would like to keep all options on the table. I do think I'm still a little confused at how the improvements that the Norwood Commerce Center has done, which meets the laws of Norwood, are somehow still not appropriate. I'm still kind of lost at how.
Well, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, meeting the laws of Norwood.
So
What they've done is produce a one-way traffic.
Right.
I don't know what that
And
has
the
to do with-
walkways,
I don't
that's
know
that's
that
kind
has
of
to do
what I
with
was
the laws
talking
of
about.
Norwood. And
So
I
I
just
look-
don't think the one-way traffic makes that much difference. You still got the same traffic circulating through the area and going right around the building where people are stepping out right into it. I don't know what you're talking about the
Yeah.
laws of Norwood.
Well, Mr. Riley is very succinct in his verbiage, being a lawyer of 50-some-odd years. I don't want to speak for him. His issue is with a retail establishment like this down in a manufacturing 150-year-old building that was not laid out for vehicular traffic in today's standards with pedestrians and lighting, and now we're playing catch-up. Coupled with the fact that when we approved this establishment, the whole redevelopment down there and the reuse of that property, it's really taken on a new face that I don't think anybody on this board in this town really foresaw. That being said, I'm prepared to make that motion if you would like me to, with those orders of conditions on that motion, that the applicant fulfill what the consultant said. But it's one of those deals where you could either you say, yes, I'd love you to do that, or you could wait and let Mr. Riley and Mrs. Anderson see the work that's done.
So you know, these continuances has personally affected, you know, obviously my ability to get to work, right, and do my job and do what I would like to do. So I'm a lot of skin in the game. The Norwood Commerce Center has a lot of skin in the game as well. They've already put down. It'd be hard for me to say, give you one answer for myself without understanding their. But you know, I don't want to.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask for a 5-minute recess or 10-minute recess so the applicant can confer with the
Well,
owner of the
beforehand,
complex.
may I ask a
Sure,
question?
Mrs. Anderson.
I don't know that you seem to say that you know how we are going, we feel. I'm not sure how Mr. Perry feels, is he?
Well,
said
yeah,
he's in
you're
favor of
absolutely
it?
right. You're absolutely right.
You seem to me that you're pointing out two people that are not in favor, and I don't know how Mr. Perry feels, Mr. Brady.
Right,
or
no,
you.
you're absolutely,
So-
you've just been the most vocal about it, and I respect that. So you brought up the concerns that are in my head as well. So, and those are valid concerns. So you're right, you're absolutely right in me saying that, so with all respect to you, that, I don't know how Mr. Perry's gonna vote. So that's the roll of the dice you have to take if I make that
No, I
motion.
mean, but you're saying you know how two people are going.
No, I don't
mean-
know how two people go, and I don't, like I said, I don't know what this side of the table is gonna say, based upon your comment. So, right now, obviously, my tea leaves are saying that it doesn't look good for the applicant.
I think the intention is to bring everybody on the same page. I think the intention is to get everything possibly done that will get this thing through,
Right.
if possible. Okay, can we guarantee it to your dad's point? No. But is it your best bet?
Right.
Frankly,
So I
yes.
think with that in mind, the 45 days is probably the most logical.
I think it's the
way
best
to-
thing.
Sir, could I
Right.
ask a question though?
Sure.
If, without the benefit of caucusing, Daniel was to say, I can't take it anymore. You still have all of the traffic issues. I mean, isn't it appropriately, believe me, I want to repeat that, these issues of lighting, traffic, pedestrian, safety are there whether we ever showed up or not. And because we are here, we are, and appropriately the center is addressing to the very best of, when I say best of ability, I don't mean intention, I mean about limitation of the space, which is a huge improvement. In this entire space of all these 90 places, making the entire facility that much safer. So I guess
I don't
I
think
thought I had a
anybody
question there.
disagrees with you.
No.
It-
It's
you're
right
on
in the end of the
right
report,
foot.
too. Even regardless of what happens here, they recommend that the improvements still be done.
So
It's the last
I
paragraph
can
right here.
just make the work is going to be done, it's being done,
Okay.
it will be done. It is
Okay.
in the process.
Last
of-
paragraph there.
Fair enough, I
It's been
just,
contracted out, it's being done, so I just wanna make sure the board understands that.
It sounds to me like there's at least a couple of board members that would be more comfortable with a completed project, which unfortunately, you're stuck in the middle. Okay, as the tenant, you're not the owner and you're not a board member, so unfortunately, your best bet, I think, my personal opinion, I would go with the motion that's potentially coming to the floor in a moment. But it's up to you. Right.
Yeah,
You
that-
can take your chances now, but it's not gonna be a good one.
Right, I think that the continuance to, for the 45 days, does it have to be 45, or is that, where did the 45
Well,
come from?
I
Oh,
came
you
up-
said it's
it's
within the
usually-
45 days,
Oh.
right, Diane?
No, see, what's coming up right now is that we're coming up against a time frame when I was chairing that the time would come to a date certain that we have to render a decision. If we don't render a decision, then you win by default. And in cases like that, we have to ask the applicant if you'll grant us an extension. If you don't grant the extension, to give us more time for that vote, then we have to be forced to vote on it tonight.
Oh.
So that's why I came up with 45 days, which would give the Commerce Center the time to, if they needed 2 to 3 weeks or whatever, so they're not pressed for time
Understood.
of 30 days. So 45 days was a number I picked from a hat.
Diane, I asked you earlier, is there a time frame? I mean, it doesn't have to be 45 days. If there's a time frame that you're aware of,
I'm not sure we can get everything done in 30.
okay.
Maybe,
Why don't we be safe?
I think though, sir, and we haven't met, but
yes,
now's our chance to do it right.
yes.
So I think
That's why I
45.
take the
Yeah, why don't we be safe? Okay?
So,
And again, with no guarantees, but I think a finished product would be a much more clear view of
More-
everything rather than speculation at the
Right.
moment.
You can do a lot of work in 45 days.
So I'll make a motion that the applicant grant the board 45 days continuance, Ramonda, that would cover us from tonight? Or how about the next date that would circle around 45 days? Might be 48 days, it might be 42, so it might be 50, I don't know. 45 would take us to what date?
June
make a motion that we,
Wait,
the
what's the
applicant,
date on that?
June 4th, that the
That's
applicant,
45 days from now?
What day is it?
Is in between, the next one after that is, June 18th.
is that 40, how many days is that from today? 18th, May 18th?
Approximately 40, so we could either do June 4th or June 18th.
To the 18th, it would take you to 40 days?
Yes.
Okay?
You all right with that? Dan? I want, believe me, but I
You think they need
understand
more
the
time
concerns,
to
you know what I
work
mean, and
on it?
everybody
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah.
certainly entitled to their opinion, so it's,
Yeah.
I'd rather do it right,
Me too.
you know?
We wanna see it, we wanna see it.
I appreciate that.
Okay? All right, so, that's a motion, Mr. Chairman, to
Second.
continue
All
to
right,
the
motion,
18th.
motion on the floor for a 45-day continuance to
And-
June 18th.
And please let the record reflect the applicant is in agreement with that, Ms. Morgan. So you have to do it in writing. Can you see Ramonda, or can you get in touch with him tomorrow and do something via the internet or whatever?
It's an email or whatever, it's
Yeah.
fine,
Okay.
please.
Okay, Diane, you're all set with that?
All right, so the motion's on the floor, any questions? All right, any, all in favor of the continuance?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0, all right, thank you, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
All right, man.
good luck.
All right. All right, next
Thank you.
case up is,
Okay.
case 19-0769 Providence Highway to the side. Is, who is this?
John,
John Shelby?
John Shelby out there, Mr. Shelby? Oh, yeah, he didn't have to show up, so.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I've, so we, yeah, so you just gotta open it and then I can speak on it.
All right, so we will. The application requests a special permit under section 5.3 of the zoning bylaw to allow moving the location of two existing signs and making one new electronic sign. Dimensions of new signs are 80 square feet. This is case number 19-07. Officially open, please.
Yeah, it's just a continuance, Mr. Chairman. After speaking with Mr. Schubert, Mr. Shelby is right. Mr. Schubert did tell him that it was the correct, application to apply under, and, I don't have it here in my notes fell out. But I think it's 6 point something, the sign bylaw, that gives the board the, I might be referencing the one at Mr. Peasy's property. But I did confirm with Mr. Schubert that, Mr. Shelby is in order with his application.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Seeing that, do I have a pleasure of the board?
Motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing, seconded by Mr. Perry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Motion to approve the application?
Motion to approve the application, seconded by Mrs. Anderson. All those in favor? Aye, 5-0 again. Moving on. We have case number 19-11, 0 Power Lane.
I think that's you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Now, Mary, do you have to, are you, Jim Hilliard's asked for an extension.
On
Maya, you
Everett?
got that note?
Yeah.
All right,
On
so the
Everett
next
Street,
case,
Haltman property. Were you on
18-25,
the
asked for
Haltman
an
property one?
extension, which we will
She's got
grant.
both of them, I think.
The
Yeah,
last one,
Haltman's
are you
asking
sitting on
for,
the,
he's asking for an extension on Everett Street. So that's-
Yeah, I was on that one, and then I was
This
on
is
the
also
next
on
one,
the
the
other one.
lighting one, the
You
last
gotta
one.
stay anyway.
do you,
no, he can't shuffle it.
No.
Yeah, can't.
all right. All right,
So they got 10 minutes according to the schedule, as everybody gets.
oh, yeah.
Only a break.
Oh, 15. And just for the record too, for the applicants in the audience, you know, we do apologize for the length of time, but our main objective here is to get it right. I mean, we don't do anything
I'm used to it.
haphazard, so I do
He's
that.
getting paid.
There you go. All right, just so everybody knows.
We can't have 10 minutes between these 10. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk.
We gotta talk to him before you come in.
Okay, so Tom,
I mean, if you hand the tie, you hand the tie.
so this is a new hearing, you're gonna open it, and read the affidavit here. Yeah.
Okay. And we have the, oh, all right, here's the, got it. All right, so this is a new hearing. Case 19-11, application requests a variance under the general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to allow up to 2 lots in the Power Lane subdivision that have less than the required lot width or any related relief the zoning board may deem necessary pursuant to section 4.1.1 and 4.1.3. I do have the affidavit here and the 2 notifications. You could verify it. I am looking for, give me the dates on that if you would, please. Mr. Murphy and Mr. Perry, please.
Mr. Chair, I have the April 11th notice.
Okay, April 11th is done.
And I have April 18th.
4/18. Okay. All right, with the affidavit and the notifications in the newspaper done, I will declare the hearing open, please. And, sir, if you could just identify yourself and
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Dan Merrick with Legacy Engineering here on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to give you a kind of a history of this project. This is for a subdivision. It's 3 new lots. It's called Power Lane. It's not actually physically built now. It was first approved back in 1988. My father did a subdivision plan here, and it's kind of sat fallow ever since. This is the part of Dean Street across from Edge Hill near Whitewood where you have a little piece of Old Dean Street where it runs off the side off of Main Dean Street. So Dean Street comes along here, and then you have a little branch which is a part of the Old Dean Street.
took me 2 days to find it.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
2 days to get out of it.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
little history. In '88, my father got a subdivision. There's a 2-family here, an existing 2-family here. My father did a subdivision to put a road in here and create 3 new lots. In '91, Mr. Glosser came along and modified that subdivision approval to basically take all the 3 back lots and make it 1 big lot. And this board, I believe, issued a permit for some type of multifamily use, which was allowed by special permit at that time. That was never built, and the road was never built. So it has sat as a paper subdivision since 1991. So I came along this past year, and we basically redesigned the subdivision, very similar to what my father did in '88 with 3 new lots in the back. So this has been through the planning board, it's been approved by the planning board. It's been through the Conservation Commission, it's been approved by the Conservation Commission. Unfortunately, after all of that happened, Mr. Schubert brought up to me that he didn't believe that these 2 lots in the back here met the width requirement. So under the bylaw, this is viewed as a rear lot line. This is also viewed as a rear lot line. I was looking at width being between side lot lines, not between a side and a rear. I met with Mr. Schubert on a couple of occasions. I met with the town engineer, I met with the town planner, met with everybody, and Mr. Schubert made it clear to me what his view of this was and that we needed to either change the subdivision or seek some type of relief like this. So Lot 2A complies. Lot 3 does not because of the width through here is a few feet shy of the 90 feet, and also in looking at the distance between the side lot line and the rear lot line, it's 80 feet, not 90 feet. And you can see where the buildings are situated here. These are 3 duplex units. Lot 4 doesn't comply because in the front, even though we have the frontage, we have all this frontage on Lot 4, the distance from this side line to the rear line is less than the 90 feet, 68.8. So that left us with two options. Okay, and what I've handed you tonight is the second option. One option was to seek this relief from you, to seek variances for lot width for those 2 lots. I did speak with the building commissioner and the town engineer about this, neither expressed any objection to me for us, heading in this direction. The second option is to take the road, as I've shown you here in purple, and to extend it an additional 90 feet, which basically creates additional geometry. And you could see that the design of the project changes in that right now we have These are existing duplex, which is not part of the subdivision, existing duplex, which is part of the subdivision, and then proposed, proposed, proposed. If we were to redesign, I showed you in the red boxes where the units would be. So we would end up having to crowd 2 of the units over here to the left of the cul-de-sac, and we'd have 1 to the right of the cul-de-sac. So just from a design standpoint, I think that the plan that we have is better, because the buildings are spaced out more. There's more effective yard area, there's more kind of green space around the buildings. I think it yields a better design. It also, I think, is better in the long term for the town of Norwood because it's less road. You know, when you design a subdivision, it becomes a public road and the town of Norwood maintains that road. And that's kind of the nature of my conversation with Mr. Ryan. And we have a design that satisfies from a technical standpoint, you know, appropriate access to the lots. You know, adding in an extra 90 feet of road seems unnecessary. So those are the 2 options. Now, going to the discussion about the granting of a variance. There are requirements that need to be met. A hardship needs to exist that has to derive from shape, topography, or soil. In this case, we have a financial hardship in the cost of the road. This road, I didn't show you much about the existing property. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it has a great deal of topography. It's downhill. This is the Neponset River down here. So, you know, you go from elevation 92 on the high side to 62 on the low side. So there's 30 feet of topography from high side to low side. So this is a really expensive road. The applicant has actually gone out to bids because we have a complete design for the road, and the bids came in about 50% higher than a normal road would cost. A normal road costs about $1,000 a foot. This road is costing $1,500 a foot. So there is I would submit to you that there's a financial hardship in having to extend the road the additional 90 feet. And it's an unusual circumstance pertaining directly to the topography of this particular lot. There's also some ledge on the property which also contributes to the cost of all the work that's necessary. So I would submit that there is a financial hardship that derives from the soil condition and the topography of the lot. I would submit that the proposed variances are not inconsistent with the requirements of the bylaw. We have adequate access. We have a road that's been approved. We have a design that's basically been blessed by the town planner, the town engineer, the planning board, the conservation commission. It's kind of unusual in that everybody's already approved the project as it sits before you. So, you know, in the interest of, you know, providing suitable access to property, I think we achieved that. I also, as I have said, kind of a you know, just kind of a big picture argument. I think that, you know, having the buildings more spaced out with more green space around the buildings is better. It's a better design. It's better for the neighborhood. I think it's better overall than us having to go to, you know, this design here, where we basically have to take 2 of the buildings and put them in very close proximity to one another over here. And then there's a big space, and then we have this other building over here. So, that is my presentation. If you have questions.
I'm sure.
I'm sure you do.
Why don't I start, Mr. Riley's side, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You indicated that you did speak with Mark Schubert, and that Mark indicated to you that, which is obviously the case, and I think you've acknowledged it, that if you move the cul-de-sac further back, you'll have the necessary width.
That's correct. He
Yeah.
has confirmed that if we build the extra road, that the new lots would comply.
They would. And this, at the moment, this is not an existing unit at the present time. This is all woods out here, so this is just a design that you folks are making.
Yes, it's
And it basically comes down, does it not, to the fact that it is the design that you folks have created that causes the problem. If you designed it differently, you wouldn't have a problem.
Well, I'm not.
Isn't that the case? I mean, we're looking at the way the lot line runs, and the problem seems to be that the lot line runs in such a fashion that you create 87 feet one way, and you say 68 feet the other way, I'm not sorry, it's 83 feet, and 68 the other way, but if you actually stopped it, instead of going all the way to the end, if you actually stopped it at the, where it terminates with the cul-de-sac, you'd probably only have 40. In addition, I noticed looking at the units as they've set up, you only appear to have 16.1 rear feet from one of the units, unit number 4B, which is also out of compliance. And if you extended this and swung the units around, you could do it in compliance. I think my objection particularly in this is, if this were an existing situation that you were confronted with, I might be a little bit more inclined to look somewhat favorably, but this is your own design that, in my view, is basically creating the problem. And I mean, there are all kinds of cases out there that say that if this is a self-inflicted problem, you don't get any relief. And you obviously can design this thing, or could have designed this thing from the beginning, so that you wouldn't have a problem. But instead, it was designed and created a problem. And I'm reluctant to do anything about that. I think that you should be extending the cul-de-sac and complying with the bylaw. You're obviously required to comply with the bylaw. Apparently, the planning board missed that because it all went through there without any comment, but it's something that you have to do, and you not only have that problem, but you also have the problem of lack of sufficient land in the rear on, I guess would apply to both 4A and 4B. So it seems to me that you're better off extending it and correcting the problems. That's my view of it.
Couple of thoughts,
Sure,
if that's okay.
absolutely.
I did discuss the setback on that Lot 5 unit, or Lot 4, and he viewed, I think he agreed with me that that was a side yard, but I certainly can revisit that with him. I'm not.
It looks more like a rear yard to me. I mean, the front, you've got the porch and the walk. It obviously looks like the front of the structures, and the lot line going to the back as you have them set up, clearly looks like a rear lot line to me. I don't know what else it could be.
So we're not talking about the shape of the land or the shape of the lots as being the basis for the hardship, which I understand your point completely on that topic.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is, you know, the topography of the lot, which is very unique and very excessive, honestly. It involves a great deal of cuts and fills and retaining walls, not only to build the road, but to build the units themselves. You know, you're having to contend with that 30 feet of cross slope is very difficult, and it yields a significant expense in terms of development costs. So that's kind of where the hardship, if the board were to see fit to view this favorably, I think you could view that as being the basis for the granting, for the hardship argument, not the shape. I understand that the lots were created by us, and we're not suggesting that there should be a hardship based on the created lot shape.
If I can expound on that too, unless I'm wrong, was there not the topography problem created when you created Lot 3 from just Lot 2 as well?
Well, no, the
I think you
topography.
said your father established Lot 1 and Lot 2, and then now all of a sudden we have Lot 3 involved in there too. So is that not?
What do you mean?
Again, unless I'm reading it wrong, did the original plan back in 88, if that's this one here, you only have Lot 2 there, is there a problem?
There was 5 lots in 88.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the plan from 88.
That was the initial one, 91.
So in 91, Mr. Glosser came in and took the back 3 lots.
Right here.
He pulled the cul-de-sac back. He took the back 3 lots and made it one big lot because they proposed some kind of multifamily development to you guys. I believe it was to this board. And then that, I believe, was granted. I think there's a decision on file, but it was never constructed. So we're kind of going back to what was originally out there, which was the 5-lot project.
Well, Danny, appreciate your efforts, but there's a reason that this property has sat out there for so long, okay? And I'm not gonna mince words. It's because it was so GD expensive to build that road.
Yep.
Everybody and their brother that has had any inclination to build, develop, whatever, has looked at this property. And it was on the market for years.
Yes.
Years. And because of the slope and the topography, as you said, the road cost made it cost prohibitive in order to acquire it for what the owner wanted.
Yep.
I've said it to many applicants, Mr. Perry has said it to many applicants that have come in before us, to not make this board the arbiter or the rectifier of a financial decision that you're coming in and pleading that it's a financial hardship. If it was a financial hardship, the cost of the property should have been less.
Okay.
And it's not this board's responsibility. And I spoke with Schubert regarding this, and there is a way to rectify it. Unfortunately, you build a longer road,
Right.
twist that fourth unit around. That is a rear yard, it's not a side yard.
Okay.
I don't want to beat you up because I know you did a great job, but it is what it is, brother. Sorry.
Mr. Murphy.
This was approved originally in 1988, you said, by the planning board?
88, yeah.
And who owned it at that time?
At that time, that was done by the owners of the two existing duplexes. They got together, and they went ahead and got that subdivision approved.
So, Mr. Riley, this is the plan that you indicated at the time, the planning board missed the dimensional requirements, is that what you're saying?
No.
No, we're talking about the plan that we created.
Gotcha.
New one.
That's not that.
So the
but-
planning board missed it on
It's
the
this
newest
one.
plan.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe
to-
they missed another
yeah,
one.
to Scott's
But
point.
it's this one here.
To Scott's point, and thank you for bringing it up, how did the eyes down the end of the hall miss this?
I don't want to assign blame to anybody. I should have gone to see the building commissioner earlier in the process. It came up when it came up.
Well, the eyes are in the building, and it was ready for Mylar's signatures, wasn't it?
It was.
So somebody, multiple sets of eyes down the other end of the hall looked at this and said it was okay. And then
Got lost.
Schubert saw it.
March
said it
Sarge.
wasn't.
Yes, correct. Yep, that's right.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. So your
Thanks,
point-
Scott.
Point's well taken, that you should have gone
Thanks,
here
Scott.
first, but that's hindsight.
Hindsight is 20/20,
and
right?
absolutely, without a doubt. Jack, can you add?
Actually, I went to the site today, and I was quite surprised by it. It's a horrible site. But
challenging.
But not only that,
You can't even get in there.
it was awful. I drove by it 15 times.
That's the reason it's
I
sad,
had to get
Jack.
gas to continue finding this.
I went to the gas station right after I was there.
Jack, and I mean it, and I've been at it 25 years.
Yeah.
Everybody in Norfolk County has looked at this thing.
I know.
It was under agreement a couple of times, I think, over the course of those years, and then the cost was just too much.
I was just amazed at the grade changes
I
and
know,
all
yeah.
of that, and the ledge, but that still has nothing to do with what's proposed. But I did see some other issues, and I apologize, because my larger sheet, I did have all marked up, and I didn't bring it because I thought it was too large to put in the
Yeah.
table.
Yes.
But I had it all
I
marked
put it
up.
on my dining room table.
But there was a number of issues, it's almost like you're creating some nonconformities too. And I just thought it was a lousy plan, no due respect. But, and I know you're trying to do the best for your client, but I just looked at it, and then after I saw the site, it was like, you know, I hope I don't go down the hill with my car. I put a life
You'll
jacket.
be in the wetlands.
I put a life jacket on and a helmet, and I got out of there.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a tough site.
Danny, how did this get through conservation? I have to remind us, it's not a wetland, it's not a floodplain.
No,
I
no,
remember
no.
this place flooded.
No,
Bunch of water
no,
down
no,
there.
that,
Flooded
it's, the
years
site,
ago.
the site is, 15 feet, 20 feet above the Neponset River. The floodplain
Yeah,
is
the water's.
on town
The
property,
wetlands are low.
way
Yeah,
off
way
site,
off.
and so are the
Yeah, yeah,
wetlands.
yeah. Way down.
So it's
Yeah, you
basic,
drown
it's a
if you
riverfront
fall down.
area,
Yeah.
which is within 200 feet of the river. So that's how conservation comes into play. We're on the outer fringes of the riverfront area with the lower part of our development, down where it kind of says lot 4.
Who are these people anyway? Who is Power Lane Development?
It's Yuri Landy. He's just a gentleman from Duxbury, I think.
Okay,
He's a builder.
all right. Any other statements, questions from the board? Anything from the audience? Yes. ma'am. Just, if you don't mind saying who you are, and
Yes, my name is Aisha Karasik,
you
and
can stand up.
my name is Aisha Karasik. I live at 45 Whitewood Circle. I'm an abutter to the property, and originally I did have some concerns about the lot plans because I feel like it's not far enough away from my property in terms of it being a rear yard, because it was considered a side yard initially with the original planning, if it is left as is. Also, I did bring this up earlier, but I think it's not a hardship other than poor planning. That the land can be used to build homes on it, it just needs to be in compliance with the bylaws. And I don't see anything in the bylaws that talks about financial hardships, and I could have missed that, so if you could maybe direct me or let me know if that is correct. And yes.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing nothing, Dan, I'll leave it up to you for the moment as to what you wanna do with this.
I think you need to close the hearing.
Okay.
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion on the floor to close the hearing, seconded by Mr. Perry. All those in favor?
All right.
5-0.
I guess you gotta ask the pleasure of the board as far as
I'm
you wanna
looking for
read.
the pleasure of the
Yeah,
board,
I
I'm
mean-
trying to, I think I know it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't wanna be the bearer of bad news, Dan, but I don't have an appetite for this, to be honest with you.
I understand.
You know, So, make a motion to deny the application.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to deny the application, seconded by Mr. Riley. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Sorry, brother.
Thank you for your
You tried
time.
your best.
I appreciate it.
Nice to see
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, ladies. Yep. All right.
Yeah, Mary's the last one. This
You
is,
know what?
Jim Hilliard asked for an extension, which he was granted. So he's gonna be a couple of weeks. And then, the last one is a problem with Island side of Mary.
Obviously a problem.
Some of you folks look familiar.
Nice to see you.
It's you?
All right, the last hearing is,
One of the things I noticed,
Sorry.
one of the plans.
Oh, yeah. Tom, you gotta entertain his motion for continuance first.
okay.
Mr. Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
Before
Dave.
you open.
That's all right.
On the case of 18-25, the 347 Everett Street continuance from 4/16, Attorney Jim Hilliard, who represents the applicant, has asked for a continuance to the next available date. If we could just get a reference on that reminder, if it, all, I need
June 4th.
June 4th. We don't need to vote on that, do we?
Yeah.
All right, so it would be June 4th. I'm looking at 7:45 PM.
Motion to approve the request for a continuance to the June 4th hearing, sir?
Motion to approve and seconded by Mr. Perry. All those in favor? It's 5-0. All right, that motion will continue as approved. So, moving on, the next case is, case number 1908, continuation from 4/16 on 500 Providence Highway regarding the electronic sign. The application requests a special permit under section 6.2 of the zoning bylaws to allow the conversion of existing static billboard to a digital billboard having the capacity of changing messages and content through electronic means, together with such other or further relief as the zoning board may determine to be appropriate. That being said, we'll move on. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, David Hearn Jr. on behalf of Clear Channel Outdoor, Inc., which is the applicant. This has to do with property at 500 Boston Providence Turnpike here in Norwood in the Highway Business District. With me this evening, again, they were here the last time, Michael Morello, who's Vice President of Real Estate and Public Affairs, seated with me, and behind him, Yano Amara, who's Director of Real Estate and Public Affairs. They're the ones, of course, most familiar with this. They do it every day, but let me recap what we were talking about the last time. This deals with an existing billboard that has two sides at 500 Boston Providence Turnpike, which is the Galleria on the Green property, that strip of stores there. And on the northerly end of that property, just off the highway, there's this two-sided static billboard, meaning the sign is put up each time separately. And we're asking for permission to convert it to a digital billboard, which would have the capability of changing messages and content through electronic means. We showed you at the last hearing a video that demonstrates how these work. We filed with you a memorandum regarding the special permit conditions, as well as information regarding safety issues related to studies done by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And there was some, I think there was some doubt or concern about whether the board had the authority to consider this application. And I had pointed the board to the provision in the bylaw that allows the board to give relief under section 6.2.21. And that is, allows for special permits. If the relief shall not, the board can grant a special permit if the relief shall not result in substantial detriment to the neighborhood. And I know that there was some question whether that was allowed, and then town council was consulted, and I've spoken with town council since we were here the last time, and he agreed, and I think he had conveyed that to the chairman at the time, Mr. Mulvihill, that was allowed. We did continue the hearing so that people could give more thought to it. I know that Mr. Riley had mentioned he might take a ride down Route 1 to see some of them in some of the nearby towns. To recap some of the argument the last time, this is a use that has become more common. It has been found not to create any safety concerns. The studies that have been done by the federal government, these are messages that stay in place for 10 seconds. It's not a scrolling message or anything like that that would be distracting. You're looking at something that's there for 10 seconds, the same way as if you're driving down the highway and looking at a static billboard that's been put up with paper or vinyl, or how those go. These devices require approval from the Commonwealth also. So if this board sees fit to approve what we're asking for, then my client will have to go to the state board that covers this, the Outdoor Advertising Board, is what they were commonly known as, but and they have a hearing process, and they give notice to an even wider area than we give. We give 300 notice to anybody owning property within 300 feet. I think it's 500 feet under the Commonwealth's rules, and they go through a hearing process there also. They're limited. We normally don't allow billboards in the town. They're grandfathered. Any that are in existence are grandfathered. This is not a new installation. It's simply changing the operation from a static billboard to an electronic billboard. The Commonwealth requires that the operators of these billboards donate or provide, I think, 15 hours to the Commonwealth for its use, for public service announcements, Amber Alerts, other types of notices. And Mr. Morello can give more information about that if you'd like. And we have committed to the town that we would give at least 5 hours a month to the town for town announcements. Say there was a problem with traffic, say there was a snow emergency, say there was a delay in trash pickup, something like that, notices about town meeting or anything, as well as local organizations that may want to put up announcements, different of the youth sports groups. We had a meeting with the town manager about that before we came to this board, and we did discuss how that works, including having somebody designated within the town staff to coordinate and act as a gatekeeper for the use of the space that's donated to the town. Also, the town, it's customary that Clear Channel offers a mitigation payment to the town that can be used for whatever, and we had discussed that with Mr. Mizuko also. So we would ask the board to look at this and to determine that this change is not substantially, it does not create a substantial detriment to the neighborhood to switch from the old style to the newer, more current style. There are benefits to the town in terms of the donation of time for public service announcements, benefits to the Commonwealth, and we think this is a good thing, and will be not creating any traffic problems, not creating any harm. We'll also have to deal with the Conservation Commission on this because it's on the edge of some wetlands area, it appears, and it's within a buffer zone. We've already talked to Mr. Getz about that. I've had a preliminary discussion with him, and after we deal with this board, if we're approved, then we'll go and deal with them in terms of whatever permission they want. Right now, it's based with, is it 4 supports on the present? Or, we think we'll convert it to a monopole, so eliminate the 4 concrete structures and make it one structure to support this. Again, it would still be one-sided. It's sort of like a V, the shape of it, so that coming northbound, you're looking at one side. If you were coming southbound, you're looking at a slightly different angle. But they're angled to be appropriately seen by motorists. Have I left anything out, Mike?
No.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, just right out of the gate, can you be a little bit more specific on the mitigation payments?
What did we discuss with Mr. Mizuko?
$25,000 per year,
That's annual?
annual.
Okay, that's what I needed specified. Thank you. Any other questions? We'll start out with Mary, please.
I think you alluded to this, but I want to make sure, there will be restrictions on what can be put on this sign.
Well, what do you mean by restriction?
Somebody could put an ad that's not quite appropriate.
Oh, well, I mean, Clear Channel controls what goes on it.
Oh.
So, I mean, you know, your experience.
We have our own standards, like our own code of ethics.
Oh, okay,
that
that's
we
what I'm
follow
looking
that.
for.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
They control what goes up there.
Well, I didn't know whether somebody in the town,
Well, the town, I mean, it has to go through Clear Channel, but when I said the town, somebody in the town hall would act as
That's-
gatekeeper.
yeah, that's what
If we're saying the town gets, say, 5 hours,
right,
Clear Channel, it's not productive for local organizations or for Clear Channel, for everybody to be calling somebody at Clear Channel trying to work it out. So we expect that we'd say to the town, you get 5 hours.
Yeah.
You might use so much for town announcements, and you've got these different organizations that probably want to. You folks act as the gatekeepers, and they can submit their messages, and then explain how the messages come in
No,
and
no,
how they get
I
changed.
understand.
They can get changed instantaneously if need
Right,
be.
10, 15 minutes from you supplying the artwork, or we can help you with the artwork.
right.
10 to 15 minutes, it's up on the street.
But if there were
No,
an
no,
emergency.
I understand. My question was that.
Yeah, no,
What
not,
was-
you can't just put anything you want up there.
Yeah, right.
There are controls
Right.
in the process.
And I wondered if the control was just with you or with the town also.
Well, if the town would propose something, they're going to be careful.
Right,
But
right.
ultimately, Clear Channel controls the
You
electronic
answered my
message.
question, fine.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Riley?
Well, I did drive down Route 1 and managed to get lunch at Olive Garden, so that was good. The result of it all is I'm not terribly impressed with the signs, but by the same token, I think I've been negative about everything tonight, so I'll say, I'm indifferent, I guess.
Don't limit it to tonight.
Please.
Gotta do something with them here, so I'll make it this one.
Indifferent.
Mr. Mulvey?
Counselor Hearn's right. I spoke with Attorney DeLuca and Mr. Schubert, and it is allowed for the board to say yes to this. And reading again from the bylaw, we're authorized to grant relief from any requirement of this section 6.2, provided that such relief shall not result in substantial detriment to the neighborhood. When a proposed use or structure does not require site plan review, the zoning board of appeals in this instance shall serve as the SPGA for such relief, and I don't believe it causes more detriment to the
It
neighborhood.
can even be some detriment as long as it's not substantial.
I
so
know.
it's not
Exactly.
too
I
bad,
know.
too bad.
I will say this to Clear Channel. You own other signs in the town?
I don't believe any, do you,
No?
I think that's the only.
Yeah.
Or the
sign we
ones
have
in
the
South
town.
Norwood aren't yours?
I think we have a couple
No.
of small poster panels, and then the MBTA owns a few.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one near the bridge in South Knoll.
Yeah, I don't
Yes, I
think,
think
I
that's
don't
MBTA.
think
Yeah.
that's a Clear Channel, there's another name on that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
out
there
front.
is such a sign.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Right.
Mr. Perry.
Well, it seems to be the way to go. I mean, I get involved with a lot of auto dealerships, and I used to be against the signs, but it seems to be the way. I mean, I thought people would pay too much attention to them and cause accidents, but that, I think you've probably proven, or can prove, that they have not caused any more accidents than any other sign.
Mhm.
So, but, no, because most of the projects use them, so it's the way to go.
Yeah, looks like we're all on the same page. I mean, it's definitely not more detrimental. If anything, it's more positive. You know, I mean, the aesthetics alone will make it look better.
I think there's a safety feature too, where if there is some serious issues, that the town can get in on it, right?
The town and the
they can
Commonwealth.
Federal
put in
government also, the
announcements
state
and
can
public
override-
safety things,
right.
exactly.
They can override whatever's on there.
Yes, I was gonna say, it'll,
Amber alerts.
if you're
Amber.
advertising
Yeah.
Ford, that disappears,
Correct.
and they can come up with a warning, and I think that's a great,
Yeah.
great thing.
I'll entertain a motion from the board.
A motion to close?
Second.
All right. Seconded by Mr. Perry or Mrs. Anderson, either or, but, motion on the floor to close this hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5-0. Second motion?
Second motion.
Second motion be to
Yeah.
approve the applicant.
Yeah.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Mulvihill. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Can I vote indifferent?
I think you already put.
No, I'll vote in favor.
Thank you.
That's a 5-0.
5-0,
also.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great,
All right.
thank you.
That was a long night, so,
According to our agenda,
blocks,
it's
I
only
only got
10
nine.
minutes
You-
per applicant.
you,
I think it was the
Too bad.
chairman.
You,
I think it was the chairman's
have you adjourned?
That's what it was?
not yet.
I
We're
gotta
all
close
set.
the hearing, right?
you closed it, you
Okay.
voted it,
We're done.
you're gonna
Now you gotta-
adjourn.
Now you gotta say goodbye, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
and,
There you go.
farewell,
That's all you
thank
need.
you.
Just say good night.
Yeah, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
So, all right.
Okay.
Motion and
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Anderson, everybody. But,
You should have made that.